This episode is brought to you by CBS All Access. If you don't already subscribe to CBS All Access, please use our affiliate link by going to talkthroughmedia.com/CBS. Using our affiliate link gives us a little credit, which helps us to keep bringing you great content. U.S. residents only. Hello, and welcome to episode 8 of the Star Trek Picard Cast. I'm Brian.
And I'm Ruthie.
And we will be covering Season 1, Episode 4 of Star Trek Picard, titled Absolute Candor. But before we get started, we have some feedback on the last episode, so we're going to open hailing frequencies. All right, so we have some feedback that actually got missed from last week, so we're going to start with that. Ruthie, you want to start it off?
Okay. We have Donna from the internet who says, question, sorry, I'm full of them. Is there a physical distinction between Vulcans and Romulans? If so, is Commodore O a Vulcan or a Romulan posing as a Vulcan? She seemed like she was showing anger. Lieutenant Narissa commented she was a valuable ally, which I believe implied she was already embedded in Starfleet. By the way, Donna from Florida. Nice to know, Donna. And it's okay if you're full of questions.
So are we.
That's right. She goes on to say, I just thought when Soji's Romulan, can't remember his name, I believe it's Narek, was talking to Narissa that the lieutenant implied O was her contact. I'm sure they'll clear it up as it goes along. Thanks for the immediate information.
Yeah, it makes me wonder about that. Like, if the one thought I had has to do with her name O, and that maybe she is part human, which would maybe make her an ally that way. Like, maybe she's not exactly Jacques Vache, I don't know, but
yeah, but names are so easy to change.
Yeah, but anyway, it makes me wonder if she's an ally in terms of the family instead of like the Jacques Vache, or if it's something else. Like maybe these two are on a specific quest within the Jacques Vache to eliminate the synthetics, and maybe the Jacques Vache have more to do than just that. I don't know. But it does make me wonder as well if she was a plant long before the, she had been in Starfleet for tens of years before the actual accident or attack, I guess you could say. Not new. Many years before even the supernova was discovered.
Well, that makes more sense if she's reached the rank of Commandant, so...
You mean Commodore?
Whatever.
It's not a term that we've used in this, in this franchise since TOS. So, I mean, I've called her Commander more than once. So, well, anyway, thank you, Donna, and good to hear from you.
Also, sorry we missed your feedback from last week.
Yeah, it just got lost in the transcription. So sorry about that. I realized it after the fact when I was looking up something else. All right, we have some new listener contributor to our feedback. Andrew from Canada. Not sure where in Canada, but I did notice the .ca in your email. So
the Great White North, as we say down here.
Take off, eh? You hoser. I'm Canadian, if you don't know. So even though I haven't lived in Canada for 20 years, but I can do that. He says, good morning, Brian and Ruthie. Long time listener to the two of you and first time feedbacker. I know I am too late for episode 3 of the show, but I had to get this in. First, I'm going to give my ratings for the season so far. Episode 1, Remembrance, 9 out of 10. The past is the past. Episode 2, Maps and Legends, 6 out of 10. That's what we wanted you to think. And episode 3, The End is the Beginning, 8 out of 10. I read one of your books one time.
Yes!
We finally got moving. The enemy has been identified, mostly. The crew's assembled. We have our ship. We have our mission. And we are ready to engage and start phase 2 and head off of Earth in pursuit of some answers.
No!
We have an attack by quote-unquote secret Romulans on Earth against a celebrated, retired Starfleet admiral. We have their weapons, their bodies, and heck, even their confession/warning. And no one, absolutely no one recorded this. No one thought, hey, Jean-Luc /JL/Picard/Captain/Admiral, take your pick. We have heard evidence here about everything you told Admiral Clancy. If we showed this to her and Commodore O, the Starfleet security chief, there's no way they could slip this under the carpet. They'd have to listen to you. Or let's call up that nice interview lady and give her the scoop of her life. I had thought of that actually and wondered that myself. There's some other things that I think actually come up this episode that made me wonder about that kind of thing. Another quote here. Nope, I'm going to leave my Tal Shiar trained operatives/assassins/bodyguards behind to do what they do best. Oversee the machines that pick the grapes. While I, at 94, will head off on a dangerous away mission I may not return from.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's completely logical.
Yeah.
Not good enough, damn it! Not good enough!
I hate the TV trope of, quote, oops, I just dropped something / need to tie my shoe at the exact same time that an assassin is shooting at my head. Like what happened to Chabon when he dropped the plum. It stunk of CW, or Saturday morning cartoon, level of lazy writing. My only hope to redeem this scene is that Chabon is actually a double / triple agent and is actually working for the Zhat Vash, and that this whole scene was staged to push Picard to go after Maddox and the quote-unquote nest of synths that the Romulans can't find. Well, I'm just going to take a second to address this one. You know, I hadn't thought of that, Andrew, but yeah, I have to agree with you on the TV trope about bending over to miss a shot. You know, I've seen that kind of thing so many times, like somebody's out of range from a sniper or something because they drop their head or something, or walk away right at the most inopportune time. It is a convenient trope. That
okay, well, how else are they going to avoid getting his head blown off?
They miss? I don't know. Maybe a stormtrooper is the one
okay, so we're going to have a stormtrooper moment. That's better than having oops, I need to tie my shoe moment. Come on. These are all tropes. These are all things that forward the plot. I just want someone to point out a better way to avoid getting their heads blown off when they don't know that there's a sneak attack coming.
Yeah.
I think that's being too picky, honestly. I mean, just someone please tell me a better way. Brian, go ahead. You're always saying how you could write it better. How would you write it better?
I don't know. I'd have to think about it. Also, why are there so many guns hidden all over Chateau Picard? He has been out of Starfleet for 14 years. He's old, retired, quote, waiting to die, unquote. And there is no reason why there would be any thought that his life may be in danger leading up to these events.
I think that those guns hidden all over were not for Picard. They were for the 2 former Tal Shiar agents that he's housing.
That's a good insight, I think. Congratulations on your new network, and thank you for all you do. Well, thank you, Andrew. Final thoughts? Possible spoilers that I will push below if you don't want to see / read them from IMDb, and we are not going to read them. We decided that that would not be the right thing to do, but I will just say my reaction to what you wrote down is do not trust IMDb for future episodes at all. So one of the reasons why, like Ruthie and I talked about this, about not wanting to talk about this during the episode, but I personally consider anything that is listed in IMDb as fiction until we actually see the TV episodes or films, because I have seen so many things be incorrect that I do not trust them in any way. So that's my recommendation to you, Andrew. I wouldn't even pay attention to those things. All right, that's it. Thank you so much, Andrew.
Yeah, you got a lot of great things to point out. And we're glad that you are a first-time feedbacker. Yay!
All right.
Okay, so next up we have James, the Augmented Sailor. And he says, "Hey, RR and BM. Oh no, Brian, these are unfortunate initials, and now I must only refer to you as BM. LOL."
Well, I'll throw another unfortunate initial. My middle initial is J. So when I was growing up, I did not hear people refer to me as bowel movement, which is what you mean, but instead they referred to me as
Anyway, mostly through the cast, I'll probably finish it today. One thing I wanted to put out there with the comments on number 1, Ruthie, while you may be right about him possibly not being able to differentiate the fight scene from reality, I feel like from my experience with my own blue nose, who, by the way, looks almost exactly like number 1, but Brooklyn, my pity, doesn't have the docked ears. I imagine number 1 reacting just the opposite and not wanting to attack on cue, but instead smother the actors with sloppy puppy kisses. My own boy would probably react this way if we had a home invasion, LOL. I could totally see a gag reel of this kind of thing happening. Pitties are such big Ophi lovers. Okay, I see what you're saying. I don't know why he would do that, but I was thinking more along the lines of if the dog is really attached to Picard, and they're very protective also. So if someone is attacking him, I was afraid that he would also start attacking, because we already know he's not a very good actor, so he's not very necessarily well trained with screen things and stage fighting and that kind of stuff. So that was my thought when I said that.
You know, it's funny when you said not a good actor, I was thinking of the criticisms that we've been getting within the podcast about a certain actor's acting.
Yeah. Anyway, he goes on to say, BM, I thought the same thing though. Where was he while this was going on? Maybe it was still rabbit season, or was that a squirrel he had in episode 1? I can't remember. Or maybe it was duck season. RR, you mentioned that everyone on the artifact was of unknown species, so how could Soji have spoken in their native tongue as they were being reclaimed? I want to say the reclaim from the prior episode was nameless, but I don't think they meant to imply that all the reclaims were nameless on the artifact. At least that's not how I took it. And I think that the reclaim from this episode was different than the one from the prior episode. Okay, but the one that, when I said that, she was specifically talking about that particular Borg. She called it nameless, and then Soji spoke in its native tongue, which if it's nameless, then they don't know where its origin is. So that was my thing. How did she know the language to speak in if that particular one that she was speaking to was nameless? And I assume that Hugh was referring to that scene, since that's the scene that we saw. If he was referring to another scene that we didn't see, then I don't know. Anyway, he says, IDK, just my thoughts on that. Also, I totally agree with you guys on the clothes thing. I'm so glad they got away from the Xanadu chic apparel from TNG. It was just awful and would not play well on series today. You just can't take it seriously. Kind of like the kids today that wear those capri tight sweatpants that hang under their butts. Every time I see a kid wearing that crap, I'm like, get off my lawn! And it's not even my lawn. That's funny. Sorry, that was me adding the laughter because I think you're funny. BTW, I totally don't understand this hate on Stewart's acting in this show. I'm with you, BM. He's in a different state of his life, and this is supposed to be a redemption arc of sorts for Picard. I think his acting is brilliant. He reminds me of my grandpa, God rest his soul. Maybe I'm seeing it through rose-colored glasses that way, but then again, if I can find a comparison in his character to my own real-life hero, my grandpa, doesn't that mean he's doing a good job? Anyway, just some initial thoughts on the cast. Great episode, BM and RR. Well, thanks, James. And I agree with you about Stewart's acting. I don't know what the problem is until someone cites me some specific examples. I don't know what you're looking at. Sorry. And I feel like people might possibly be comparing what they remember from TNG to now. And yeah, he, like you say, he's a different person now. Sorry. But that doesn't mean bad acting. That means he's just different.
Yeah, that's my take as well. And this gets brought up again, of course, this week, and I think we need specific examples because it's very difficult for me to see that. And we'll get into this more once we talk about this actual episode. So, all right, next is from Twitter, Ken from Chicago. He says, having heard your response on the podcast, listing all of the major events Picard has been involved in that saved the Quadrant and the Federation, the Klingons, the Romulans, and Vulcans, I cede the point to Ruthie. Picard's far more famous than I had given him credit. Thumbs up emoji, Spock hand emoji, or Vulcan salute emoji. Why would a secret Romulan spy agency destroy the very ships that would evacuate Romulans to safety? If they truly fear and hate androids, then having the survival of the Romulan people be owed to since might be, to them, a fate worse than death. How many people feel death before dishonor? How many soldiers choose to die rather than betray their country? How many Christians died in Roman arenas instead of betraying their faith? How many biased folk died rather than accept help from a doctor of color or female doctors? Or put it this way, how many people did the Borg kill from the time #Picard chose not to infect them using a virus through Hugh because it betrayed his principles? Who is right and who is wrong? That is the question. You can make the argument either way. Thinking emoji, Spock emoji. So about money, I think the Federation doesn't use money internally, and that's kind of highlighted with stars around it. And that's mainly within the planet's jurisdiction. It's transactions off-world or outside the Federation where you need money. Example, with Klingons, Romulans, Ferenginar is not part of the United Federation of Planets. Whether it's literally gold press platinum or credit or a trade of resources, protection, services, etc., there's still some resource being traded. I argue one of them most species in the Quadrant can use is energy. It can be used to power factories, ships, weapons, etc. Thumbs up emoji, Spock emoji. Okay. I'm not sure how you would transport energy, especially from planet to planet. Huge lithium batteries, maybe?
Well, I was going to say energy providing devices like the lithium crystals or something.
Right. That could be. All right. Well, that's it for Ken from Chicago. Thank you so much.
Okay. Lila from Scotland, who gave us feedback on our feedback forum, says the Romulan couple is on the run and is explained more in the 3-issue comic Star Trek Picard Countdown. Highly recommended. Enjoying the podcast. Thanks.
Yes, and we included a little excerpt from last week of the Patreon call. What I highlighted was, of course, us talking about the show, but a good portion of that recording actually talks about the Countdown comic. So if you want to hear more about that, you can go to patreon.com/Brian and Ruthie, and myself and several of the other patrons. Ruthie wasn't on because she didn't read the comic. We go into the comic a little bit and share our impressions of it. I think it's more obvious, but what was earlier mentioned, I think it does make you wonder. It's like, well, why would you leave your former Tal Shiar trained operatives or whatever, bodyguards, tending the grapes? It does make me wonder.
It's a Good question.
Yeah.
I'm going to read Brian from Hawaii as well because Lila's was so short. And Lila, I would love to hear some audio feedback from you.
Yes, I agree.
I mean, no pressure or anything. I'm just saying, love the Scotland accent. All right. So next we have Brian from Hawaii. And he says, additional feedback for last week. Brian's response to my criticism of Stewart's acting was off the mark. You did a good job at describing the writer's choices for advancing Stewart's character, how he's changed over the past approximately 20 years, made regrettable choices, showed a lot of arrogance, been depressed, aged greatly, etc. Yes, I agree with you that it's hard to see a beloved character like Picard portrayed in this way, and I truly am struggling with that. However, you missed the point of my criticism. I was highlighting a completely separate issue related to the quality of his acting, not the direction the character has taken. His acting style in this show so far seems amateurish and unnatural. He's always the weakest, least believable actor in any scene. It seems a real effort for him to spit out his lines, and he delivers them without any of his usual mastery of the craft. Either he's really gone downhill since Logan and lost his edge, or he's purposefully trying to seem disjointed in every scene.
Yes.
You asked for a specific example, and frankly, I think this affliction affects every one of his lines delivered in this series so far. The worst was probably his flashback scene with Rafi in the 2385 uniforms, and I'm happy to say that this week in episode 4, he seems to be much, much better compared with the prior 3 episodes. I hope this trend continues and we see him becoming more natural and believable as the mission progresses. Oh, and regarding my other comment about clothing in the series, I want to be very clear that I also do not like and never liked the weird spandex onesies.
I'm very glad to hear that, Brian, because I was starting to wonder about you.
Oh, that's funny. Having said that, this show is supposed to inhabit that universe, so I'd prefer to see some better continuity in that regard. Like I wrote last week, it's a very minor nitpick, and besides, fashions can change quite quickly, so it's really not that important. Rios' smoking is a bigger problem, but that's a topic for another discussion.
Yeah, I still don't understand the smoking thing, unless, of course, he is himself a hologram.
That would be weird.
It would be.
It's sort of an affectation, maybe. I don't know. Like, what's his face said, Michael Chabon said in that Instagram thing.
Yeah.
Cigars?
Yeah. And, well, I guess we'll highlight it now because I wanted to bring it up based on something you said in your discussion there, that Michael Chabon did a post on Instagram kind of responding to some of the criticism of the show or some of the questions he's getting about the show. And he did mention the cigars and, some of the other things like justifying the use of foul language and whatnot. And I think that he addressed some of that. I think he didn't address other portions of that, namely the family aspect of watching Star Trek with the family, introducing your children to it, that kind of thing. He didn't really address, but it's a really good post about that. There's a link to it in the Facebook group. About the criticism about the acting, we had also asked for, like I said, specific examples. I honestly think that you and the other people are missing, you're attributing what you're seeing on screen to Patrick Stewart not being able to act. And that's not it. What I think you need to look at is he is acting according to what's written and how it's directed. Okay. Maybe you need to question what's being written and what's being directed here. Not that he doesn't know what he's doing. What I'm starting to question with this show right now, just a little sneak peek on my rating on this show, is that I think they are delivering a show that Patrick Stewart wanted to act in, which was not necessarily the best show that they could have done. Okay. And I'm starting to come to terms with that, and I don't like that I am. So I'm arriving at a similar viewpoint, but from the opposite way. So we'll get more into that as we go. But I think that what we need is Captain Picard that we had, and I grow impatient at the fact that Captain Picard, he's asleep. He's still not quite there, and I'll bring up more specifics about that as we go. But yeah, I think that you're not right about that. But I mentioned in my responses to you on the Facebook group that, and I'll just leave it at this to say, I didn't respond last week, not because I was avoiding it, but because I was so diametrically opposed to your assumptions and your conclusions that I didn't really want to get into it without going on a rant. So I just don't agree at all. And that's why I didn't respond. It was funny. When I was editing the episode, I thought, Brian's going to bring this up that I didn't address that. And sure enough, you did. So, but anyway, I respect your opinion. I just don't agree. So
I also don't agree.
All right. So now is time to get into this episode. So season 1, episode 4, the first episode with 7 of 9.
Woohoo!
Do I detect a 47?
Ha
I think so.
ha.
That is my 47, episode 4 with 7 of 9. Anyway, titled Absolute Candor, written by the showrunner Michael Chabon and directed by number 1, Jonathan Frakes himself. The description is as follows. The crew's journey to Free Cloud takes a detour when Picard orders a stop at the planet Vashti, where Picard and Ruthie relocated Romulan refugees 14 years earlier. Upon arrival, Picard reunites with Elnor Evan Evagora, a young Romulan he befriended during the relocation. Meanwhile, Nera continues his attempts to learn more about Soji, while Narissa's impatience with his lack of progress grows. And that's TVMA with language and violence, the air date of February 12th, 2020. And, we know that that's supposed to say February 13th, but in this case, it actually was February 12th because when I checked it at about 2:11 Eastern time, it was available. So that means it was before midnight Pacific time. So they had it up a little early if you were up. All right, Ruthie, what would you give this episode of Absolute Candor?
I am going to give it an arbitrary rating of 9 out of 10.
Well, I'll just say that after rewatching last week, I am going to up that to a rating of 9 from 8.5, but I am going to give this one an 8 out of 10. Promise Prisons. It didn't really work for me. So, and maybe that's just a disappointment that we only got 7 of 9 in the last 20 seconds of the show. I don't know, but just in general, I just didn't love this one. So, all right. Listener ratings, Ruthie, want to start?
All right. Edwin from Arizona says 8.9, bind yourself to my cause.
James, the Augmented Sailor, says Absolute Candor is 8.7, hate that hospitality holograms.
Okay. Claire from Facebook says 8.5, Jolantrus.
Brian from Hawaii says, I rate Absolute Candor 9.7 out of 10 spot shoutouts. I think this is my favorite episode so far. Although I think Brian is Mirror Brian because we don't agree because this is my least favorite. But I'd still rate the first episode better since it had data and so many Easter eggs in it. Well, which is it then, Brian? Is this one better or is the other one better? Anyway.
He can raise his esteem of the previous episode and still like this one.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Steve from OKC says 9.7 out of 10 paradigmatic paradigms.
Daniel from the UK gives it 10 out of 10 guilt trips taken by Starship.
That's funny. Fred from the Netherlands says 47 out of 55, which is approximately 8.5 out of 10. Anatomically correct robot friends.
And thank you for the 47 again. LT from NC is giving this one a 9.4 out of 10 Girardi conversation killers.
Donna from Florida says, I'm a sucker. I enjoy all episodes of Picard. 9.9 out of 10.
Nick from Arizona says 9.5 out of 10 Deadly Man Sisters. Yeah, sister boys.
That's funny. Rick from Cleveland says, I rate it 7 of 9 beheaded Romulan senators. That was awesome.
Yeah. All right, so let's do our yeses.
Yes!
James, the Augmented Sailor, says old school Romulan bird of prey and 7 of 9. The ship battle and the fight scene with Elnor and the former Romulan senator. The fight was well choreographed, even if it was very quick. The ship battle effects were beautifully done. While I also find so many holograms a bit unnecessary, the back and forth with Rios and the Khan hologram was a lot of fun.
All right. We've got Steve from OKC who says 7 of 9, finally! And the closed captioning was great. And I'm going to read Fred's too, since Steve was so short. Fred from the Netherlands says, my wife's cheerful reaction of seeing 7 of 9. Great cinematography, the village, the Vashti nunnery, Rios' ship on the inside, space views, including the battle. The way Narissa wakes up her brother Narek. Ugh. After getting a Star Trek Toriel in Narissa, now also getting a Star Trek Legolas in Elnor. This name sounds Lord of the Ring-ish. That's funny, Fred. The fact that the child actor that plays young Elnor is Ian Nunney, being brought up as Elnor in a Vashti nunnery. But cha. This Ian This Ian Nunnery plays his role very well, by the way. You mean Ian Nunney? Anyway. Zani and the way Amira Van portrays her. Okay. Sir Patrick, because of his superb acting in the scenes, 1, where he stands with Raffi in front of the hollow chateau's window and is saying, I may never pass this way again. 2, discussing with Zani to take Elnor as Kalan Khan. And 3, the confrontation with the Tenkum Andrev. And then finally, he says the CGI of Tenkum Andrev losing his head.
Brian from Hawaii is next. He says, 7 of 9 is here at last, and Picard owes her a new ship. I can't wait to learn more about why she's there and what her role will be going forward. I'm happy to see one of my all-time favorite Star Trek characters return and hope she has a significant part to play in this story. James the Augmented Sailor and Steve from Oklahoma City are in agreement with this one as well.
And so is Ruthie.
Yeah, I'm glad that she's here. I was only disappointed in the fact that it was so short. The visuals on the Vashti planet were a stunning sight to behold. The production quality on this show is really unmatched. I'm enjoying the levity the Agnes character brings to the crew dynamic and really hope she's not a Romulan plant because I want her to be as pure as she appears to be. I agree wholeheartedly.
Me too.
Speaking of the ship's crew, I'm especially impressed by Cabrera's ability to portray a wide range of characters, 5 so far, each with different accents. Yeah, and Fred, okay, this isn't Fred. I thought it was on Fred. Well, Fred didn't bring it up. And he didn't bring it up in his voicemail, so I'll bring it up here. I am reminded of Orphan Black and the Tatiana Maslany portrayal of all the clones in that show. It's very similar. And that hospitality hologram, was that supposed to be a Canadian accent? I couldn't quite tell. It certainly, if it was, it wasn't a very good Canadian accent, by the way.
I don't think it was a Canadian accent. I think it was just a...
Like a book nerd type thing. I'm sorry, sir.
I don't know. But they talked about that in the Ready Room.
Yes, Will Wheaton brought it up. And I didn't think of it until I heard it from there. So thank you for outing me on where I got that from. But yes, I think that Will Wheaton's observation there was right on the money. He continues, he says, I think Stewart's acting was much improved on this episode, especially the Romulans only restaurant scene, which was very well done and, of course, served as a mirror to a Coloreds Only / Rosa Parks allegory. Yes, I would agree with that. And I think, again, this is where you have to go as far as the portrayal that you haven't liked so far with Patrick Stewart. I think it all has to do with the writing and the direction of Patrick Stewart, and maybe the choices that he's making in terms of what he wanted to play. I don't think that has to do with his actual acting. He's acting exactly as intended. It's a question of you criticizing what was intended. I think that's my take on it. Overall, this episode was excellent for giving viewers more insight into some aspects of Romulan culture, such as the convent, in a way much deeper than we saw even in the two-parter unification. I have a different take on that I'll bring up in my nose. So, all right, that's it for Brian. Thank you so much.
Okay, LT from NC says, gotta go with the Dr. Girardi is the Tilly of Picard. She has the quirky conversation timing down pat. Plus, the amount of eye rolling between Rafi and Agnes makes me laugh.
I would agree with that. She is
Me
definitely
too.
the Tilly of this show.
Yeah, and I like it. He goes on to say, the Kowat Milat. I think it's a pretty cool idea to have a sect of warrior nuns in Romulan society. I agree. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I just had another thought there about Dr. Girardi. She's like a more confident Tilly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, she does have, I don't know how many degrees, several. At least,
Right.
At least 3. So 7 of 9, especially with her hair down. That scene where Soji is watching the video of Ramda and the way they did the overlay shot, then cutting to the long pause on Soji's face. I had to go back and rewatch that scene to get the fullness of the dialogue because just looking into her eyes like that was almost hypnotic. And I have to agree. I think the overlay was awesome. And here's what I said about it. I loved the effect of seeing Ramda's holographic face superimposed over Soji's. When I was taking my notes, that was a note that I made. I was like, wow, that was really cool. It was,
Yeah.
I agree, hypnotic.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yerp. Okay. Going on with LT, he says, guess we know where Picard was when the Mars attack went down.
Yep.
I'm also including the scene where Rafi confronts JL about going to Vashti, and he says, I may never pass this way again. I think that pretty well set the tone that he knows this may be his last time out in the bigger universe, and reinforced the idea he knows this may be his final crusade.
Thank you so much, LT. We got a short one here from Nick from Arizona. He says, a Borg tradition. A Borg tradition? A Borg tradition. He fell in a heap. 7 of 9. Not sure what he fell in a heap was supposed to mean, but I'll take the next 2 since that was pretty short. Rick from Cleveland is next. He says, Romulan warrior nuns. I like it. I want the rumble between the warrior nuns and the Zhat Vash. Boy, spell check hates that. Yeah, I've noticed that too, actually. Zhat Vash, not spell check friendly. Another yes for the Bird of Prey, not getting noticeably retconned. That thing could have come straight out of Balance of Terror. Yeah, to a certain extent, yeah, I would agree with that. Of course, a yes on 7. I figured that was her as soon as I saw a little Delta Flyer-ish ship. I wish we'd have seen closer shots of that ship. Yes, I agree. The last one, and I'm honestly not sure if this was directed at us, but we did get an @ on this, so it's from Twitter @FaithfulChickie. She says, At Picard Cast, finally, 7 of 9 shows up. Yay! Big smiley face. So excited. Now it's all coming together. Hashtag Picard. And then she also has a reply to CBS All Access and Jerry L. Ryan, which is Jerry Ryan's Twitter.
And Jerry Ryan liked it.
Yes. So very good. All right, Ruthie, what about you? What yeses do you have?
I really liked Rafi's impression of Picard. I thought it was hilariously accurate.
It was, actually.
Laying a course.
Yep.
That was funny.
I like the reference to the USS Ellison. Although if Harlan Ellison were still alive, he probably would have sued. All right. Do you have another yes?
I mean, I think I pretty much said mine when I agreed with the ones I agreed with, and I didn't have anything extra necessarily. Other than I agree with 7 of 9 showing up.
Yeah, and that goes without saying. Yes, I'm definitely happy that she's on the show, and I'm hoping that she's going to be on for the rest of the series.
Me too!
I mean, she's listed as a special guest star, but that could have been contractual, so I'd love to see if she's going to be a full-time cast for season 2, but we'll see. I want to highlight 2 more things. I really like the ETH, the emergency tactical hologram. He looked, and he speaks Spanish to him.
Yeah, that was funny.
Which makes you wonder about universal translators. They seem to be using a lot less of that in this show.
Yeah, there are a lot more subtitles.
Yeah. Which is kind of surprising considering the Klingons from season 1 of Discovery. I would have expected them not to do that, but I also liked what I thought was a very realistic kind of narrative there about the Romulans blaming Picard because they blamed him for doing nothing. And you know what? That is right on the money. I think that they're right in blaming him for that because he honestly should have done something, at least from a humanitarian. And, it makes me wonder, it's like, why didn't he join the diplomatic corps or something like that? Like, why did he have to just completely shut himself off from serving in some way? Like, he left Starfleet, but he didn't leave the Federation. So, I'm really perplexed by his actions and how he dealt with them. He cut himself off, and based on the things that we learned from him this episode, he didn't even stay in contact with the Quat Malat or anything. He didn't even know what was going on Vashti, which to me doesn't sound like the Picard that we know. That's my take on it. But I'll say that it pretty much negates what our headcanon was, what we thought would have happened, which is Picard did something after the fact to assist, but from a non-Starfleet perspective. But clearly, based on what we hear in this episode, that did not happen.
I think that was kind of implied, though, because in the very first episode, Laris basically claims that he's the savior of all Romulans. And we find out in this episode that that's not really the case. So yeah. I can't really put that in my yes, because honestly, it makes me confused. And I think you wrote more about that somewhere else that I wanted to get into a conversation about, because I agreed with what you wrote elsewhere.
Yeah, we'll get more into it. All right, so that's it for our yeses. So now it's time for our no's.
No!
Still love hearing that. All right. Fred from the Netherlands says, why is there, after the Jatvash, a planet called Vashti, and Picard's old archaeological friend is also called Vash?
His archaeological girlfriend?
Yes, which he highlights TNG's Season 3, Episode 19, Captain's Holiday, and TNG's Season 4, Episode 20, Cupid, and I don't know the episode number, but she was also in Q-Less from DS9. So, do the writers have a limited vocabulary or what? I hope not.
Sure.
That doesn't say much about the Pulitzer Prize,
Yeah.
you know? The silly teenager in love sliding game of Narek and Soji. Fred, I'm not surprised that you bring this one up, and I have to say, I 100% agree with this on this. I thought that was stupid.
Me too.
Why try to order a drink and starting a brawl if you have only 7 minutes until transport?
I was wondering the same thing.
I wondered the same thing as well. And this is part of why I gave the episode an 8, because that really did seem to be like, was that just spur of the moment? It's like, hey, I think I'll start a fight.
I honestly, everyone has been talking about how arrogant he has been. To me, this is the first example of true arrogance that I've seen from him. When he rips that sign down and throws it on the ground and then walks on it and then brazenly walks into this area and expects to get service. Like, for me personally, I haven't really seen that much arrogance before, but that was damn arrogant.
I think that this would have been served with a line to Rios when they're on the comm to say, I'm going to try something or something like that. Like he just otherwise seems like he just decided to spur the moment. Hey, I'm going to pick a fight, you know?
Yeah. Because how exactly would he be able to get any kind of anything in 7 minutes from a restaurant, bar, whatever you want to call that place? I'm like, I can't walk into hardly any food establishment and expect to get anything and leave within 7 minutes. Honestly, I mean, come on.
Yeah. So
and we already know that the window is very short. So
yeah, so we have to think that was done intentionally, but it seemed awfully presumptuous to just expect, like, I'm assuming that what he did was that he did that in the hope that it would start a fight, in the hope that Elnor would take up the struggle. And that is what happened, but at the same time, like, what if Elnor wasn't around?
Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about a trope. That's a TV trope.
Yeah, definitely.
And I don't know that, I mean, he left. And I don't think that the nunnery is around the corner from the bar. So it's not like he could have hoped, ooh, maybe he'll see me getting my butt whooped and come to my rescue, because that would have been presuming that after he completely turned him down and walked away from him, that he was following him. Again, sheer arrogance.
Yep.
Hubris. So I don't know about that before this point, but that was definitely a prime example. Anyway.
Yeah. And I don't like this about Picard. I don't like this.
Yeah, before it wasn't really arrogance, but confidence. And now it's that was not, I mean, that's not, he always had high respect for other people's customs, traditions, beliefs, etc. So why now suddenly has he decided that what they think, feel, etc. is wrong? And that's not normal Picard thinking, unless he really has changed that much in the past 20 years or what have you. I just don't understand that, honestly.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, I had a different take on it. I don't think that he thought their impressions were wrong. I just think that, like, there's all sorts of things. It's like, did he see Elnor, like, in the background to know that he was around? And I think he did that with the, actual intent of, well, obviously he did know. And for that matter, did he know that guy was a senator? I mean, or did he clearly not know who it was? Because that awfully seemed convenient that this guy was a senator. So if...
I don't know. It was wrong. I mean,
Yeah.
To me, whether or not his intention was to display disdain for their thoughts and feelings on the matter, that's what he was doing when he basically threw that sign on the ground. I mean, consider all of the foreign civilizations that he's come in contact with over the 7 seasons of The Next Generation, and not once did he ever do something so disrespectful.
Yeah, I agree. Next is, how did Raffi know how to transport 2 people? Nobody said 2 to beam up. Even my wife made a remark on that watching the episode. Yeah, I would
I
agree.
thought the same thing. I was like, wow, that was super convenient. They were about to get blasted to death, and suddenly there's Raffi beaming 2 people up. A simple 2 to beam up would have been sufficient. But
Yeah.
alas, that did not happen. Somehow, people just know stuff in this.
It almost seemed like this episode was written like as they were shooting, because there seem to be some gaps there that I don't know.
Yeah.
Last part, why did Picard go to Vashti 14 years ago in this silly little bright version of an Indiana Jones outfit? He was still full in function as an admiral. It was not fully a private visit, still talking about relocating more Romulans. And I would agree. And the whole thing about, well, I have to go to the central station in 3 days. It's like, well, isn't that on the same planet? Like, can he just beam over and it be like instantaneous? We've seen this already. So I don't know. Made it sound like there was this whole thing. Unless the central station is off planet somewhere. I don't know.
I think that's probably the case.
Yeah. Oh, anyway, thank you, Fred. We'll get more from you as we go.
Yeah, and you had very valid points that I also didn't like.
Yeah.
Okay. James, the augmented sailor, says the Kowat Milat are the single fiercest warriors he's ever seen. If Picard were any other man and Worf were there, he would have killed him where he stood for saying such things. Oh, that's awesome. Great callback to First Contact. Then he goes on to say, no Puppy or Laris and Chabon. I really hope they do some legwork for JL back on Earth so that we have an excuse to see them. I was thinking the same thing. Honestly, I was a bit disappointed when his study turned out to be on the ship, because I was hoping for a Chateau Picard scene with Laris and Chabon, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And then his final thought is the creepy Lannister-esque stuff between Rizzo and Narek, even more prevalent this episode. They really need to stop this. And Fred also had this in his yeses. No more Game of Thrones in Trek. Rizzo can keep that black outfit, though. Just saying. Yep.
All right. Next, we have fellow Brian from Hawaii. He says, I had problems with the dialogue level for this episode. I kept having to turn it way up just to hear, but that made the battle scenes and especially the commercials much too loud. I have noticed this in the coming attractions kind of, next time on, and there was a comment about that in a past episode that I went back and watched the first 3 episodes again this week, and definitely did notice that in the episode where it was mentioned.
I think that's a CBS All Access thing, because when I was watching on Prime Video, it was fine.
Yeah, maybe.
But when I watched The Ready Room on CBS All Access, it did seem weirdly, like the volume was weird, kind of out of, like they didn't really, I don't know. It just wasn't great. So CBS All Access needs to up its game if they're going to combine with Viacom.
I did notice that it was a different editor this week from the last 2. I didn't get the name. I didn't write it down, but it was a different editor.
I don't think that's an editor thing. I think it's a CBS All Access thing because, like I said, the Prime Video volume was fine.
Yeah, that's a good point. How did Rios know to beam both Picard and Elnor, a.k.a. young Elrond, when all Picard said was now? Yeah. Yep. We already talked about that. Another minor complaint I had with this episode was the way characters repeatedly went back and forth between Federation Standard and Romulan languages. This doesn't seem to jive with how their universal translator works. Yeah, I mentioned that earlier. I agree. And it just seems like, I don't know, maybe the universal translator is a Starfleet thing, and maybe...
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
I was always under the impression that the universal translator was somehow in their comm badges.
That was my impression as well.
So if they don't have those comm badges, then...
Yeah. The sock sliding scene on the Borg cube seemed completely unnecessary to the plot, and clearly it was made up by Narek. Other than the quote-unquote seed of doubt he planted with Soji, it served no purpose. And Steve from Oklahoma City also doesn't get this one and talks about it more in his voicemail.
And I also have to concur. I didn't like it.
I didn't like it either. I thought it was dumb. I thought it was very...
I agree. It was dumb.
Yeah. It seemed like a teen drama type of thing.
Yeah. And what fool would believe him when he said that the Borg did have traditions? No, they didn't. Sorry.
Yeah, they have a tradition to assimilate.
Exactly. Their only tradition is to assimilate and be part of the hive.
Tradition is irrelevant.
Yeah. Your biological and technological distinctiveness will be added to our own.
Yep. Finally, I am once again confused to hear a character, Rios, mention a quote-unquote cash gift as a suggested bribe to get Picard onto the planet's surface. What's the deal with money being brought up all the time on this show? Apropos to the discussion last week, I wanted to recommend the book Trekonomics by Manu Sadia. I hope I said that right. It provides a deep dive into the topic. In a nutshell, the Federation is a post-scarcity economy with all basic needs taken care of thanks to the invention of the replicator. The currency that matters is reputation, not monetary wealth. And to that, I would say, well, this is not a Federation world, or it's not completely established that it's a Federation world. So in this case, I think that it makes sense. It wouldn't exactly make sense if it was a Federation world, but, you know, we already have issues with the whole money thing already mentioned about, like, you know, Rios needing payment for his ship and whatnot. But, you know, quite honestly, he's providing a service, so, like, what's he just going to get, you know, likes on his Facebook page as payment? You know?
Yep, that's...
Or like that, was it Black Mirror episode where people, and they also talked about this on the Orville, where, you know, people would get kind of likes on their equivalent of Facebook.
Media.
Yeah, yeah.
They get retweets.
But
I remember that episode. I thought it was good.
Yeah.
I sort of tend to think that I'm going to go back to what I said last time, where I don't think that it's necessarily a literal we don't have money thing, even though they say we don't have money. I think it's because the concept of money is foreign to most. You know how, like, most kids these days don't have any idea what a rotary dial telephone is?
Yeah.
I think it's kind of like that, because it's not really that they don't have money. It's that, as they said that one time, they're not motivated by the need for financial gain.
And I could see a 24th century equivalent to kids react to videos on YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. What is this paper thing?
Yep.
Yeah. So
this is a checkbook.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of what I think. Because obviously they have some type of currency. They have to. They've talked about it before on Deep Space Nine, Gold Press Latinum. So we know that such a thing exists. We just also know that they're not driven by financial gain or motivated by the need to make lots and lots of money in the same way that we are in our time now, this century. So that's kind of what I think. I know it trips me up. It trips up a lot of people about, I don't understand this whole economics thing, but I'd be interested in reading that book, honestly, about the whole.
Yeah, it's a good recommendation, actually.
Yeah.
We'll have to take a look at it. I think someone else mentioned that to me as well, somewhere else.
Yeah. I wonder if it comes in an audiobook.
Yeah, it might. And we'll leave it to say that Steve from Oklahoma City had this in his Not Good Enoughs as well. He kind of mentioned the same kind of thing and would like a better explanation on it. And so would I. I think that as I kind of tried to mention last week, and I'll reiterate that I like that they're bringing this up, and I am hoping that they're going to better define this. I just don't want them to kind of just leave these dangling chads, so to speak, hanging. I don't want them dangling. I want them punched out. So I want more explanation of the Federation economy. Even if it is something that I go, that doesn't quite sound right. I still want to hear something because I think I need more. So, all right, next.
Okay. LT from NC says, the ongoing Romulanister thing, just no. If they were...
Love that you called it Romulanister, by the way, LT.
I know, that was pretty fun.
That's brilliant.
If they were going for unnerving and creepy, they hit the jackpot. I agree. I had something similar in my notes, and I basically said that the scene between them was just off, and not because of the weird incest stuff. I just didn't really believe the whole choking thing. I don't know. There was just something off about it. It just didn't play well for me, and that was, I should say, in addition to the creepy Romulanister thing.
I agree with you, Ruthie. I 100% did not buy the choking thing at all.
I know. I just I don't know.
It was almost like he was playing to choke,
Yeah.
like it wasn't believable.
Right. You want to talk about bad acting? That was kind of bad acting in my opinion.
Yeah.
It was like
100% agree with that. Yeah.
And I think it was kind of bad acting on both their parts. Honestly.
It was. Yeah.
It's like she doesn't really look like she's choking him, and he doesn't really look like he's being choked. I mean, I can make my voice sound like that too.
Yeah, because
it doesn't mean I'm being choked.
She wasn't throwing any weight into it, and
exactly.
And he looked like he was like choking, and like close to death, and obviously it didn't. I had a problem with this. And I have a problem with them just in general. That whole dynamic isn't really playing well with me.
Me neither. It's not working for me. I don't know what's going on with them. I need more explanation, honestly, of like, is there a sibling rivalry between them, or did they have a troubled upbringing, or I need some kind of backstory to be able to understand why these two are acting the way that they are. I mean, are they half siblings? Are they step siblings? And there's no word for step sibling in Romulan, so they just call themselves siblings, and that's why they're acting like they're hot for each other. I don't know. It's just weird. It's weird. I don't like it. It's weird.
Yep.
Okay, moving on. LT says, the risky business sock slide. So you're in a potentially dangerous Borg cube and you're trying to gain the confidence of someone. Just don't see that playing slip and slide on the linoleum would be the way to get her to talk to you. Then again, I'm not a guy with a Tal Shiar dental plan.
And I would say, obviously, not a good dental plan. That damn tooth. I cannot, ever since I've seen that, I can't unsee it. It just looks so like, why haven't you fixed? You're a successful actor. Why have you not like taken a few, months off and gotten your teeth fixed?
Well, to that, I would say maybe he's not trying to conform to your idea of beauty.
Okay. But in general, I just don't get that scene either. I just don't. And the other thing I noticed is that they're in the slip and slide. His ears looked especially white and very off color, like it didn't match the rest of his body, the rest of his head. And I went back and I watched this like 3 times over and over just to see. And it's like, no, it's like they didn't color the earpieces right in that scene, and or the lighting certainly reflected it, but it looked like this is something that could have been fixed in post and wasn't. So I challenge thee to look at this and see if you agree. All right, Nick from Arizona says 7 was amazing. and Seven was in danger, but the old bird of prey was pretty weak. Even the planetary defense grid was a shadow of an echo of a zero-G Burnham/Pike hero scene. Really? I'm trying to how was that? I'm assuming he means the scene from Brother, season 2, episode 1 of Discovery, but I don't see the parallel there. Do you?
No, I'm not sure what he's talking about. Honestly, I don't know.
This whole dogfight is mentioned later in the comments, so I think it's in the not good enoughs, but we'll talk more about it there.
Okay, cool. All right. One more. Finally, Rick from Cleveland. No of this week Borg rituals. Hell no. That scene took me right out of the episode. I agree, Rick. No on a predictable plotline. As soon as Picard gets in trouble at the bar, you know the kid will rescue him. Although a Starfleet admiral and a warrior nun walk into a bar could lead to a good joke. Yep.
Yeah. I like that. I could just picture that. A Starfleet animal. Oh my God. I'll leave that one in. Although, Starfleet admiral and a warrior nun going to a bar. Anyway. All right. It's now time for our no's. I have quite a few, so I'll ask you, what do you have?
Honestly, I'm finding myself rather bored with Soji's story.
The thing that I have liked about Soji's story, and this is why I gave it a 9, I upped it, is I liked the plot with Ramda, and I liked the scenes where she's going back and researching Ramda, like in the video there. But yeah, it is kind of boring, and I have to agree. Well, I'll start my nose with one. Well, it's actually two because they're related. The young Elnor. I don't think that they did a very good job casting this actor, or maybe they cast him before they casted Evagora, because the young Elnor has blue eyes, but the grown-up Elnor has brown eyes. In both cases, the eyes are deep blue and deep brown, so it's very noticeable. And some people commented about like how eyes change color when you're growing up. And yeah, I know that you can have eyes go from blue to, say, hazel or green. So I'll agree with that. And maybe it's different with Romulans. But the other thing that I'll mention is that the young Elnor doesn't have an Australian accent, and neither do any of the other Romulans, like especially in the Warrior Nun sect, but he does. So to me, that also suggests that maybe they cast Evagora, or maybe he tried to do an American accent and couldn't. I don't know.
I mean, honestly, child actors are so hit and miss. They probably had a hard enough time finding a child actor that was decently good enough that they just kind of... I mean, how are you going to ask a child actor, okay, mimic this adult? Some of them can do it, but not very many.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like that's sort of being nitpicky. I mean, I understand they have different colored eyes and that's a glaring thing, but at the same time, I'm like...
The accent, though?
Well, again, are you going to tell the child, okay, we need you to speak with this slightly Australian accent now, or have the... I don't know. I just
see what would have been effective.
That big of a deal.
Like you could argue that he picked up the Australian Romulan accent from
the same way that Laris picked up the Irish Romulan accent.
Well, yeah, and the fact is that maybe the scenes with in the flashback, Picard had his communicator on, so maybe we were seeing the universal translator, speaking and not Elnor. But what would have been more effective here is if maybe some people in the bar would have had an Australian accent, then you could say, okay, well, that's how we picked up the accent. It just, to me, it was the combination of the eyes and the accent made me think that this is not a good match between them. So that's why had to bring them up together.
I guess, but I feel like if you didn't have a problem with Laris's accent, then you can't really be mad at the other.
No. Just to be clear, I don't have a problem with him having an Australian accent. It's that the young Elnor didn't have one and nobody else had one, so he miraculously picked up an Australian accent. That's kind of where, like, it didn't seem to come out of anywhere else. That's where.
Where did Laris's Irish accent come from?
Yeah, but we didn't see a young Laris, right? Like, if a young Laris had an Irish accent, then we go, okay. But
yeah, but you're missing the point. Where did Laris pick it up from? That's what you're saying.
The magical Irish fairy? I don't know.
Yeah, but I think that's what you're saying.
The leprechaun?
You're saying that what's-his-face couldn't have picked it up because there weren't any Australians around. Well, then you could say the same thing about Laris. Picard isn't Irish, so...
Well, yeah.
Like I'm saying, you can't be mad at one and not the other.
I just mean that, like, normally she would have, like, she picked up, and by the way, I wasn't, trying to disparage any Irish listeners out there, okay? But my point being that it just seemed like this Australian accent, the fact that he didn't have the accent, no one else had the accent, makes me question. It's like, well, like, they could have easily just had one character in the community have that accent, and I would have bought it, but that didn't occur. So it made me.
I say,
okay,
where did Laris pick up her Irish accent from?
And I don't. That's what I'm saying, though. It's like we didn't see a young Laris. So
you are agreeing that you're being irrational.
I'm always irrational.
I'm just saying you cannot be mad at one person for picking up an Earth accent and not be mad at the other person for picking up a different Earth accent.
I'm the one that said this one, so I just didn't want to speak up.
I knew it was you. I knew it was Nitpicking Brian hiding in there, which is why I almost messaged you. I guess we're getting a visit from Nitpicking Brian this episode. But I didn't have time because I was trying to get ready to record.
You tried to stop me from appearing, but I have another...
Shut up, Nitpicking Brian. You've had your say. Okay. You have to go back to the short treks, listeners, to know what I'm talking about of the Star Trek Discovery podcast. So, if you're new to us and don't listen to the Discovery episodes and didn't listen to the short treks, that's where this comes from. I did a whole thing on Nitpicking Brian and vowed that he would never return. Yet somehow he showed up. So. Anyway,
I tried to shove him in a box and ship him off somewhere, but it didn't work, obviously.
No.
Someone said return to Cinder.
All right, Ruthie, what else do you have for nose?
I think I put it in a not good enough or something. So I know I put it in somewhere. Okay, yeah, I think I put it in a not good enough. Not necessarily a no, a different scene. So I think I don't really have any other no's. That's pretty much it. I mean, aesthetic things like eye color and accents and stuff don't really bother me terribly much because I understand that these are human actors playing all of these parts. So I tend to give them a little bit of leeway, I think, in most cases.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I'm going to give these out of order from what I've got written down. But I've heard some people criticize this show because it feels too modern. Like, it feels very much like it was written in 2020. And, it is. But the point that I brought up is he's trending on ROM Twitter. The fact about the Rafi monitoring the comm traffic, I just was like, okay, he's trending badly on the social networks of Vashti. So here's one that I have to bring up. In the flashback, they beam Picard away while he was walking down a flight of steps. How is that going to work when he beams in? Isn't he going to like trip and like break his leg or something?
That's a good question. I thought that was kind of an odd choice, I suppose.
It was very odd.
An odd DP choice or an odd director choice. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It almost seemed like it was something done in post, like they forgot or something. I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean,
it's almost like
that's not something you can really edit out. Like,
right.
He's either standing still or he's walking. You can't really edit that to make him standing still because it's movement.
Like maybe, in 2385, they've been able to change it so that, the character is walking down some steps. Oh, when we reconstitute him on the transporter pad, we will
standing still.
Yeah. So, and we've kind of seen this before, like, for example, on Discovery, when in the What's Past This Prologue episode, the last one in the Mirror Universe, spoiler for anyone that hasn't watched Discovery, and we've said it before, you really should watch Discovery. Anyway, there's that one scene where Burnham grabs Giorgio, and they are together as they beam out, but they are separate when they beam in. So, I guess maybe there is some precedent of that, but I don't know.
I think that's more a matter of the writers have forgotten how certain Star Trek technologies work.
Yeah.
Or they've decided that that doesn't matter, that they used to work that way. They don't work that way anymore in either the past or the future. So
Romulan and Terran alike. There was a line, I think the head nun there, I can't remember her name. She mentions
somebody said it.
Yeah.
Earlier.
Yeah. But Romulan and Terran alike. And my question is, well, the Federation is not just a bunch of Terrans. So what about the other Federation worlds? Like, why would they only mention the Earthlings, the humans? That just seemed kind of strange.
Don't you know? Zani.
Thank you. The other thing I'm going to mention here has to do with Picard. Picard's a jerk. He never tried to contact Elnor, like, in 14 years. Like, if he was so close to him, he just, like, logically assumed that he would get a home. And for that matter, like, why didn't the, Zani or the Quat Malat, why didn't they contact Picard to see if he'd take him? Like, it just seems kind of crazy. You would think they just didn't bother to contact him. It's not like people that are not in Starfleet have no way of communicating. We already know that that's not the case. So why didn't they contact Picard and say something? Like, that's where I'm finding that the show is losing me a little bit. It's that they've created this show based on what Patrick Stewart wanted to portray. And so you've got this Picard who, for some reason, just like decided to, like,
check out of life.
Yeah. Like he's in the middle of a chess game and he throws the chessboard and, swipes all the stuff off the board and runs away. Like, he just stops being Picard and checks out. Like, it's clear, like what Lyra says in the first episode, that you've forgotten what you did, who you are. And it really seems like Picard did. Like, he just shirked all responsibility. And that's what I don't like. It's like, he comes in here, he's got no frickin' clue of what's going on the planet. And, even if he just decided that he wanted to go there, like, the Picard that we know would have been, like, on his pad, researching, the current situation of Vashti, would have, been prepared. And he clearly wasn't prepared here. Like, he didn't seem to know anything what was going on. And it's like, this is where I'm having a problem with this show right now, is that, and I'm finding, like, I'm really hoping that this kind of turns the tide a little bit, but I'm finding as each episode is going, I'm liking the show less and less and less. And I don't like that. It's like, and you know, there are some glimmers of Picard, you know, coming back. And I want to get to that because that's the Picard that we need these days. We don't need this, like, I don't know, Picard who's really lost touch, because he's clearly lost touch.
A man-child, basically. I'm gonna take
Yeah.
my toys and go home.
Yeah. It
Out
just,
for 14 years.
it doesn't seem in character with him. I just don't get it. You know?
I agree. And I don't understand why the person that we saw this is what I'm saying. I need more. The person that we saw in 7 seasons of Star Trek The Next Generation is completely acting contrary to the way that he was.
Yeah.
So the 7 seasons are, I mean, people don't generally change their character that much. And that's what I don't understand, honestly.
I'm really glad that you are having the same problem with it, because
yeah, I am. And honestly, I haven't really been as gung-ho as everybody else, but I haven't really wanted to say it because everybody's been so excited. And I'm like, yeah, it's great, but I don't think it's as super fantastic as everyone says. I'm disappointed a lot, honestly. After each episode ends, I end a little disappointed.
Well, I came to the conclusion after watching, like, we're recording this episode later, like doing it Saturday morning as opposed to Friday night. And it's a good thing that we did, because I got to watch the show 2 more times. But if we had recorded at our regular time, I would have only seen the episode once. And I'm wondering, why is this? Like, but I realized, like, as I went back and watched it 2 more times Friday night, it's like, it just didn't work for me. It's not grabbing for me. And I came to the conclusion right now that I'm liking Discovery more than I'm liking this. And I'm disturbed by that, because I should like Picard more because he's Picard. And I'm hoping that by the, you know, in the next episodes, 6 episodes, we're going to see that Picard, that Patrick Stewart performance that has been talked about so much by the cast and the producers. Because, and this is why Brian and Fred, you know, you've been touting this whole thing about Patrick Stewart's acting, and I just feel like it's not the acting, it's the choices that were made in the character and him carrying those out. It just doesn't seem like the Picard that we know. And that's why I said last week, I was wondering how much of this is the Ironic syndrome. But I just wonder, it just seems like this show right now has been dictated according to the desires of the actor and not of what the story should have been, you know? And I don't like that I'm having this reaction, but I'm being honest. And by the way, I think it's worth saying that, you know, anyone that's giving us a review or whatever should realize that, look, we're being honest. We're not like flag wavers. We're not fanboys here. We're going to give you an honest review. And, you know, that's
we're
where
not
I'm
haters,
at right now.
but we're not fanning out either.
Well, we fan out when it's appropriate. You know, we definitely fan out, but I don't feel that it's appropriate to fan out.
Well, we're not blinded by what's right in front of us. I think some people tend to. What was that video that you posted about 4chan trolling Doomcock and whatever? Who was that? What's that guy's name?
Yeah, Ket Wolski.
Yeah. Ket Wolski. He posted a video. That's how I feel like we are. We're real. We're not like hiding, or just, like, when facts are presented in front of our faces, we don't find reasons to disbelieve it. So that's kind of that's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm right there with you. I feel like I don't really know why these choices are being made for this character, and I need more. I need to understand why, because again, I don't think it's headcanon. It's based on what Laris said in the very first episode. We remember what you did, blah, blah, blah. And it's almost like hero worship.
Right.
Kind of a thing. And so that's not jiving with what happened in this episode.
It is not.
Where it's clear that he as we assumed that after he resigned, he went on to do more, he didn't.
Yeah.
And so why is she so, what happened to make her so, you're so great, you're so great?
Yeah.
Like, what made him so great? What did he do? Tell us, Laris. Please, let us know.
Because I had this in the notes that I really want to know. What did he do? Because we know that he gave them a home, like Laris and Chabon, a home.
Right.
But
I mean,
he seemingly abandoned the Romulan people. And yes, he did a lot for them during the initial rescue attempt, and he definitely did rescue a lot of them, but he also left them behind. What that Romulan senator says in that fight is like, yeah, Picard, you left them behind. You just let a lot of people down. And it doesn't make sense unless Picard was given specific instructions that you are not to continue your rescue attempts or whatever on your own, if he was forbidden to do it. But that hasn't been described to us yet. So only if that was the case could I understand what I'm seeing. But if that's not the case, then you got to tell us more, because this is becoming a big disconnect. And I'm kind of surprised at this point that I'm feeling this way about this show. So
yeah.
I just didn't expect this at this point. So
yeah. And I mean, to play devil's advocate, that he is being blamed for what the Federation did. And he can't control the Federation. He tried, but it didn't work. So I don't really understand or agree with the blame for the actions of the Federation.
Right.
But I do get that he let me say this. I don't feel like he should have just slunk away back to the chateau and sulked for 14 years.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, to say that he gave up, well, okay, but I mean, as we thought, maybe he called in a lot of favors and did all this stuff, and maybe he couldn't. And okay, I can't really be mad at him for that, but I can be upset about the whole not really, I guess I could just boil it down to the whole taking my toys and going home sulking thing.
Yeah.
You can't blame him for the actions of the Federation, but he didn't really go back to them and say, look, I'm sorry, I did what I could, but it just wasn't enough. That to me is kind of a cowardly reaction.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like Picard is a coward. So I don't really understand why he wouldn't just, go back and say, I'm sorry, I did what I could, but it didn't work out. And this is why this thing happened with the synths on Mars, blah, blah, blah. I mean, again, maybe he couldn't, but he could at least have communicated with them. And I don't understand why he was expecting to see Elrond there when he was also expecting Elrond to have found another home.
Elrond Hubbard.
Ha ha ha. Elnor. Sorry. Elnor. Sorry. I can't keep these names straight in my head. I was thinking Elrond, but it's Elnor.
Well, it is kind of on the nose, because
I know. Anyway, that's my thing. I'm like, I don't feel like the blame for the Federation stuff is warranted, but he can take the responsibility for what he did or didn't do himself. So
that I would agree. Although I will say that it is human nature to find a scapegoat. So as far as that's concerned, I think that the Romulans using him as a scapegoat makes sense. But I think they're right in blaming him for being basically taking his toys and going home. And
yeah, they also blamed him for giving them false hope. I'm like,
right.
I don't really think of it as false hope. It's kind of, it's hope, or it's, I mean, I don't know. I'm like,
well, like I say, I think that's them making him a scapegoat. Yeah. So that's not accurate, but at the same time, I get where that's coming from. But the thing I don't understand is and forget the human term to call it this because I don't know what the equivalent would be, but you'd think there would be a humanitarian kind of effort to save the Romulans that would be outside of Starfleet. You would think that there'd be an organization that had been evolved to handle that, maybe not a part of the Federation government, but, like a volunteer organization.
Yeah, some kind of compassionate service or something.
Right, exactly. Like UNICEF or World Vision or something like that. And you would,
right.
or the Red Cross.
Yeah.
Like there wasn't a Red Cross to help the Romulans. Like, I don't buy that. And it seems to me like the next logical step is Picard gets kicked out. He joins the Federation Red Cross and helps in the humanitarian rescue of the Romulans. And that didn't happen. And I don't buy that. I just don't, I don't think that would actually happen. So this is where I'm like, I don't buy where the story's going right now. So
yeah, I don't understand why they have decided to leave out these things that surely in an involved society would still be there.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, for example, the Red Cross or what's that thing called where people volunteer like if they're taking like a
Peace Corps?
Yes, thank you. Peace Corps.
Yeah.
Like a Peace Corps thing.
Exactly. That's exactly the kind of thing that should have happened, regardless of what Starfleet would do, regardless of what the Federation would do.
Yeah, because those kinds of organizations are outside of politics.
Right. So
I agree.
Again, I don't buy that. And you would think that an organization that was doing that would recruit Picard and say, we need you to lead the effort, or okay, if you don't want to do that, we
carry on.
At least need your help. I don't buy that. So to me, that's a big swing and a miss on the story here. So like I say, I'm surprised that I'm at this point, but 4 episodes in, and I think, going to a world where he helped them, I think it really highlights it. I just having problems. But all right, let's move on to our not good enough section.
Not good enough, damn it! Not good enough!
All right. Well, James is first, the augmented sailor. He says, Elnor's relationship with JL seemed to patch up rather quickly. I mean, I get the quest met the criteria, but it seemed like everything was fixed once the fight happened. Well, I guess if it was a lost cause and that's what he needs, then I guess that fits. But yeah, I would agree to an extent. What do you think?
Yeah, I didn't really like that whole, suddenly it was okay. It's kind of, he did seem to change his mind rather quickly. He kind of made a point by, you walked away from me, I'm going to walk away from you.
Yeah. Although I will say, James, that I did like that once they beamed on the ship, Picard kind of said, don't you ever do that again. Because to me, it reminded me of him chastising Worf for killing Duras. It was a similar kind of thing. Picard did not like that. So back then, I feel this episode borrowed from a lot of other things. I got a Raiders of the Lost Ark vibe, a Game of Thrones vibe, and a Lord of the Rings vibe. It wasn't a no for me because it wasn't necessarily bad, but I prefer when Trek stays true to Trek. Yeah, there are definitely certain tropes that are borrowed from other things here that I have to agree.
Yeah.
He continues and he says, I also got a bit of a Dune vibe from the Coat Malat name. Mm-hmm. It sounds like terms that would be used in that universe. This I thought was pretty cool, actually, though, considering Gurney Halleck is our main character here. For those unfamiliar with Dune, Gurney Halleck was Patrick's character in David Lynch's 1984 epic.
Yeah, like the Coat Malat is like the Kwisatz Haderach.
And Brian from Hawaii chimed in on this in his nose as well, and lists the decapitation as a Game of Thrones thing. And yeah, I guess, that was kind of a tropey thing, but I kind of liked it, but at the same time, it was like, Because it wasn't like especially gory the way it was done, and it was kind of surprising. I didn't expect his head to fall off there, but
It's a very sharp sword.
yeah, very sharp. Last thing he says, another just absolutely abrupt ending. Yep.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Okay. Brian from Hawaii says the space battle in orbit with the old Romulan bird of prey looked very nice, but it had too much of a Star Wars vibe. Even the planetary shield looked just like the one on Rogue One when objects struck it. The producers are greatly overusing sounds in space to the point of distraction. I'm not saying they have to be 100% realistic like 2001 A Space Odyssey with no sound at all, but all of the swooshing and screeching as ships whiz about is too much like the style of fantasy Star Wars, not science fiction Star Trek. This show needs to be careful about straying into the visual look of Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. The convent reminded me a lot of Rivendell as they talked about going on a quest. I have to agree with you there. I see what you're saying.
I don't know. I mean, we've seen kind of whooshing and stuff like that in Discovery, like that big space battle at the end of season 2. I know had some of that. So
yeah, but that battle had other things going for it, and I had a problem with this battle. So
yeah,
yep.
Yeah, I would agree. And this is kind of mentioned again in the next. Not good enough. You want to take that one?
All right. LT from NC says, this was hard for me to put here, but I have to go with a qualified not good enough on one part of the show that I otherwise loved. The starship fight at the end was so good because it showed what kind of pilot Rios can be and set the scale for La Sirena and the old school bird of prey, which I thought was just awesome. The reason it's a not good enough is because I just did not see how, with all that juking and jiving he was doing, that the bird of prey kept him between it and the planet. I know it's a travel at the speed of plot thing, and we had to have additional tension, etc., but I have to completely agree with this, and this is my problem with the whole fight scene. It was cool, but it was completely unnecessary. It was absolutely unnecessary. There was zero reason why they couldn't have just jumped away. At least no reason that was given on screen. I mean, nobody said anything like, oh crap, our engines are down. So why didn't they just like, peace out, homie? Yeah, it was cool getting 7 at the last minute. And that was, I feel like, the entire reason for the fight scene. But after that, it was completely superfluous. Maybe they should have told us, oh, we can't jump away because our warp engines just went kablooey. Or something like that. I don't know. I mean,
and yeah, they could have warped away before 7 of 9 ships showed up.
Exactly. That's my point. They could have warped away immediately when the bird of prey. They had Picard and Elnor, so why were they hanging around? Just so that Rios could show off? I mean, honestly, nobody wants to fight when you can run, unless you're Klingon.
Yeah, I got to agree with your points there, Ruthie. I hadn't thought of it that way, but now that you mentioned they should have just warped away, it's like, yeah, they should have just warped away. Why didn't they?
I don't know.
To pick up 7 of 9.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was completely a plot device fight.
It 100% was.
That, to me, is a terrible trope. I'm like, come up with a better way to not blow somebody's head off than leaning down at the right moment, and I will be all over that. However, the entire reason that you have a fight scene is so a character can show up. I know you can do better than that. And to show off for the fight scene, I mean, it just, okay. Say something like, our warp engines took a hit. Like the bird of prey blasts out of nowhere or just showed up out of nowhere, almost directly on top of them. They had to swerve into the planetary defense shield, and the planetary defense shield got off a lucky shot and knocked out a warp engine, and they couldn't just immediately jump away, so all they had were maneuvering thrusters and impulse, and so they had to do all this juking around and stuff, and that's the reason why 7 of 9 showed up. Easy fix.
Or the bird of prey was threatening Vashti or something like that, and they had to defend it. Yeah. Some reason for them to stay behind like that. And again, that could be quickly fixed in a line of dialogue, or
Exactly.
it took a shot to the warp core. It's going to take us another 60 seconds to dissipate the energy before we can warp.
Yeah, and then we have the EEH, the emergency engineer hologram, show up in the engine room with a Scottish accent saying, "I'm giving it all she's got, Captain."
Yes, we need that.
So there you go.
Or has a visor on his head. Okay, Scotty. I vote for Scotty. I just wanted to give LaForge some love.
I understand, but
yeah,
having a hologram be blind is not really logical.
Right.
But anyway, yeah, I thought the same thing, except for I'm like, I agree. It was great having Seven show up. That was completely awesome. Just, I wish they would not have made this gigantic plot hole in the story to do it. And then he goes on to say in one final not good enough, Ramda's right eyebrow. I blamed it last week on the Borg appliance removal, but in the video.
All right. Next comes the aforementioned Fred from the Netherlands and his not good enough. He says nitpick.
And I'll say it in nitpicking Brian speak. Picard throws the only Romulan sign on the ground with the text down. When he walks over it, the text is up.
That's true. I did notice that as well.
Then he has an announcement. He says, and I'll say it in an announcer's voice, "This is the last time I will nag about it in my audio feedback, and then I will stop talking about it and enjoy the series further. Again, Sir Patrick's acting is not always 100%. Sorry, I'm not a Romulan nun, but still, I can't be anything else than absolutely candid," using the term of absolute candor. And I would say that listeners, hopefully you and Fred will agree that we are using absolute candor in our assessment of this episode. So,
right.
Brian asked me to pinpoint down the scenes where I think Sir Patrick's acting is not 100%. And I have to admit that in this episode, it is less than in previous ones. And where it is less obvious. So perhaps Brian from Hawaii's hope becomes true. Quote from episode 3. In the third episode, his acting has not improved at all. I found it distracting and embarrassing for him. I'm sorry to say it, but I don't think he's just playing a 92-year-old man. He really is old and seems to have sadly lost a touch. I sincerely hope subsequent episodes change my mind. And it seems like he did, but he did give a couple of examples here. He says, Fred's inventory, not comprehensive. In episode 4, at the 2-minute, 55-second thing, he says The Three Musketeers by Alexander Dumas. Okay. At 28 minutes and 19 seconds, between the two of us, my knees are not what they used to be. Okay, Fred, that's one that I have to say that I see where you got that one. But again, this feels not so much of Patrick Stewart's portrayal as it is the writing here. To me, I think that he's kind of, I don't know, maybe he's not appropriately giving it the right spin, but to me, that's a stupid thing to say, you know?
That's right. Brian just called you stupid.
No, I did not.
I'm just kidding.
No, I'm saying that I'm kind of, I guess what I'm saying is this is Pulitzer Prize winning award, Michael Chabon's not best writing. Like, right. That's what I'm getting at. I don't think this is up to his standard that we've seen so far. So that's what makes me think that this episode might have been written on the fly. Like, they made a lot of changes.
Yeah, maybe.
You know?
They didn't make the right changes.
Like, oh my God, Evagora, you can't get his American accent down right. So what are we going to do? And so he spent a bunch of time trying to figure out what to do as a fresh new showrunner. So, and maybe this
can hardly be blamed on writing.
No, I'm saying blamed on his rookie showrunning. That's yeah.
Well, you were talking about his writing, and then you went into an accent that doesn't really have anything to do with writing. So I was just curious what was going on there.
I was blaming Chabon in general.
Okay.
Okay.
Chabon, we're calling you to task.
Yes. And at 29 minutes and 59 seconds, he says, because I'm an old man and you're a young one. Again, that feels like writing to me.
Yeah, I still don't understand how these things can be blamed on acting. I mean, you do understand that Sir Patrick does not come up with the dialogue, correct? Please tell me that you understand that, because someone else gives it to him. That's what actors do. People tell them what to say, and they say it. They say it well, or they say it poorly, and I just don't see how that was said poorly.
He says in episode 3, the opening scene, a little stiff and not emotional enough after they had unexpectedly accepted Picard's resignation. I disagree with you on this because he's shocked.
Yeah, he's still in shock.
Yeah, that's what this is. It's not appropriate at a time when you're in shock to give an emotional response. It's too soon.
And besides that, Picard wasn't really that emotional very often anyway.
That's true.
I mean, he's often... I think that was one of the reasons why Sarek felt so comfortable doing the meld with him, is because he was very logical. So Sarek is drawing on his logicalness, his logic, in order to pass his emotions to Picard.
In the first episode, he has a couple of things. In the opening scene, when Picard is playing cards with Data, especially when he says to Data, "Let's behave like civilized men." Again, is this writing? And in the interview scene at several points, example at 12 minutes 33, he says, "It is a day of memories. Raising awareness of the supernova's lingering impact is work that I am extremely passionate about." You know, that one, I'm going to say, this is the one that I'm going to give you, because I think I felt that was a little hollow myself. So, Fred, congratulations. You've scored one for you and Brian from Hawaii. But I think that's the only one I'm gonna grant. But I did think that was wooden, and I don't know if maybe that was Picard kind of like tempering his enthusiasm for the news, or if that was just bad acting on his part. But I'm gonna grant you this one. I'm going to grant you this one. So congratulations, Fred. You have changed my mind with that one scene anyway. Although in general, I still got to say that it's mostly on the character that they're trying to present here and not on Patrick Stewart himself. So, all right.
And I have to agree. I just don't see what you're talking about. So in other words, what that means is you're wrong.
Except for that one example.
Except for that one thing. Yeah. That's
yeah.
It.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I didn't really see that one necessarily either. So I don't know. But I'm sure.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. So I appreciate the examples. And like I said, I can properly tell you that you're wrong after you've given me examples. So there I go. Oh my gosh. Because I like to tell people that their opinions are wrong. That's what I do.
She does it to me all the time. Including before we recorded.
What did I say before we recorded?
No, it's because I was being a jerk. You were wrong?
Oh, well,
no, I was being a jerk.
Yeah, well. Anyway. Okay, so Nick from Arizona says, every character is just as hesitant as Picard. Okay. And then Rick from Cleveland says, not my favorite Frakes episode. I'm not sure what it was this week. The episode wasn't bad. It was kind of meh. I guess you'll have those too. You inhaled. Were you going to say something?
I agree.
Me too.
I think Rick, you're speaking truth here.
That's right.
I don't think that it was his best Frakes episode, and yeah, it wasn't.
Preach!
It wasn't bad, like it wasn't terrible, and that's why it was an 8. But it was normally I say that an average episode is an 8.5 for me. and you can criticize my way of rating stuff, but my take on it is a show that I'm watching better be a 7 at least, because if it's less than a 7, I'm probably not going to watch it. I'm just going to like tune out. So, it's still good. There was a lot good in this episode. Like I like the interaction, especially I think on the La Serena. Sorry, I know that the and la are, it's like I'm saying the. Yeah. So sorry
it's like
about that.
when people say the La Quinta in.
Yeah, I know.
But anyway, what are you going to do?
And I caught myself as I said it. But anyway, I like the ship scenes.
Mm-hmm.
I like the interactions with the characters. But yeah.
So, okay, Rick from Cleveland goes on to say, I caught a not good enough in the opening credits. There's a shot of the vineyard, and in the background, there are telephone poles with power lines strung between them. It's almost the 25th century. Why would there be 20th century power infrastructure in place?
I took a look at this before
I do not know.
Yeah, I took a look at this before, and I think that you're incorrect here. I think what you're seeing are the lines that are typically used in the vineyards. So I think that's, you're mistaking it for power lines, but in fact, it's typical that the vineyard has these lines around it. So to
protect
grow the grapes
if they need to.
Yes.
Like cover the grapes or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And it just happened to be the angle that is in the opening credits that makes it look like a power line, but when I had a good look at it, it doesn't look like that to me. So, all right. So it's now time for our own not good enoughs. What do you have?
Let's see. I think my main one was the fight scene.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's pretty much it.
I'm surprised, much like I was last week, I'm surprised no one mentioned the F-bomb. I, again, don't really have problems with it. And it actually sounded appropriate for this one. But again, well, it's TVMA, and, it did have someone getting beheaded. So I guess it's not exactly PG. So I guess in that case, an F-bomb is okay. But it makes you wonder, it's like, why do they... like, Star Trek isn't Westworld, and they're... I mean, the only thing that we're missing, I think, are naked, whatchamacallits.
Synths.
Yeah. What do they call the hosts? Is it hosts?
Yes.
On Westworld? Yeah.
Well, I can't disagree with that, honestly. I am a little disappointed that they have decided to take this route just because they have also decided to make their all access account work on the backs of Star Trek fans. I'm still a little bit pissed about that. And therefore, because of that, they feel justified in making all of this stuff TVMA. As I've said before, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah. And the one thing I'll say about that is that, and I mentioned this, I think in, I don't know if I mentioned this in the episode last week, but I know Nick from Arizona talked about the visual descriptions, and I've noticed that CBS All Access now has a descriptive audio track. But the thing I don't understand, and this could completely, I think, alleviate some of the problems here, they should have a track that's censored. So they could have a version that has the words bleeped out that parents could show their kids, and, have an explicit track that is for everybody else to use. I don't know why they can't do that. Like, to me, that would seem to appease a lot of the issues there. But
yeah. Well, did you ever see whether or not anyone said anything about the parental issue, not just that they don't cuss in Starfleet? Because I know we had I'm talking about the Instagram video where Michael Chabon addressed specifically swearing, because apparently some people think that they don't swear in the future.
yeah, which
and
to
Michael
me is
Chabon
crazy.
Michael Chabon said that, of course they do. We just couldn't show it before because of the federal communication regulations and all that jazz.
Like, I'm sorry, but are you telling me that there was no swearing? Are you telling me that Deep Space Nine didn't have swearing in it? Because I would think on a station like that, there would have been swearing. You know, to me, I would think that maybe it is a Starfleet code of conduct for them not to use swear words as a whole. And, you know, it's not becoming of the Admiral to swear. But then again, I have to say that Picard's actions are worthy of a swear because it was sheer hubris to say that, you know, to act that way.
Maybe. But my point was, did anyone say, okay, great, but what about the fact that I can't show this to my kids in that Instagram video? You were looking through the comments. Okay.
They didn't.
So I'm not sure. My point is, I'm not sure that it's even occurred to Michael Chabon that might be an issue for some people, not just the fact that there's no swearing in Starfleet.
And I think that if he isn't aware of that, if he does another one of these kind of videos, I think that he will have to bring it up because I know for a fact that other people will have brought it up by then. So, but yeah, I really didn't see it really. It was brought up in the comments, but it wasn't addressed. So,
okay.
So anyway.
All right.
My turn now.
I guess. I mean, do you have anything else in your not good
Yeah,
notes?
I do.
I said mine in the nose, I think, accidentally.
Okay. Romulus has talk shows.
That's funny.
I'm just thinking of like there being, you know, an equivalent to Maury Povich saying, "You are not the father."
That's funny. I mean, sure, why not? They have to have a way to present their dissemination or disinformation. Disseminate their disinformation.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Doesn't the Romulan warrior nuns, doesn't that sound like something you would have seen in Tarantino's Trek?
Maybe.
It seems like something from Kill Bill, I think. But yeah, I just, I don't know. It's cool, but at the same time, it's kind of weird.
I didn't have a problem with it. Why not? Don't be a misogynist, Brian.
Okay, well.
Just kidding.
I'll sound like one of those ultra rights, you know, the haters, when I say that the Romulans, formerly a monoculture, now appear to be Terrans with pointy ears and green blood. You know, it's almost too much of a change. Like we're seeing, like up until now, we saw all the Romulans look a certain way, especially in the TNG area. And now they just look like us. And it's like, well, where were all these people up until now? I'm not seeing that. So that's what I'm saying.
We really only had experience with the military.
True.
Not that
and maybe,
much.
And maybe the military were all, you know,
crazy bowl haircuts and the weird uniforms.
And we still see that. Like we're still seeing people that are dressed that way and wear their hair that way. But it seems like, you know, we're also seeing, like we saw, like Terrans with Terrans. Well, that just proves my point. We see Romulans with afros here. We saw, you know, bald. Well, okay, we have seen bald Romulans like Nero in 2009. So I guess we have seen that.
And
Chabon?
No, what's his face in Nemesis? Even though he wasn't Romulan, he was still styled after them.
Oh, yes. Shinzon.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, true. Very true. So, yeah, okay.
The
but
Remans, I guess you would say.
And I have seen some people suggest that maybe Commodore O is Reman in disguise as a Vulcan.
No.
Don't think so?
No.
Because it would explain the photosensitivity.
Yeah, that's true. That would. But again, that's sort of something that would, I mean, I will say again, that's rather an obvious giveaway if you're trying to hide.
Yep.
Just why would you just give yourself away? I'm not a Raymond. Oh, crap. I'm very photosensitive.
All right. Well, with that, let's move on to our feedback section and open hailing frequencies. All right. We have a lot of voicemails this week, so we're going to get right to them. First, we have Jeff from North Carolina.
Hello, Star Trek fans. This is Jeff X-Force11 leaving my feedback for the most recent episode. Wow. In this episode, we got Romulan samurai women who are out to be the protectors of their people and bind their swords to worthy causes. We get a whole lone wolf and cub situation with Picard and his young friend now on the mission. And we get 7 of 9 finally entering into the picture. I am loving this series, and I'm just, the 45 minutes or so of each episode just go by so quickly because they are putting so much into each episode. I'm so happy to see some of the backstory that we've missed, and I cannot wait to see what's next. All right, those are my thoughts. X-Force11 is out.
Well, thank you so much, Jeff, for your short but sweet voicemail. And yeah, so Warrior Nuns.
Yeah, Warrior Nuns.
All right, cool. I don't have too much to say with that one, do you?
No, I just agree.
All right, so we got a voicemail from Cyberman.
Yay!
Hello, Brian and Ruthie. This is Cyberman. I'm going to talk about Picard, Episode 4, Absolute Candor. This was an episode that brought up so many questions, but what was interesting about it is that they are obviously universe building. They're giving us a whole new universe to explore. Now, in the feel of the new crew, I know you guys were talking about The Expanse, but this feels much more like Firefly to me. Because think about it, the Federation can be considered the central planets. Everything's happy, everyone's fed, everyone has a job to do, etc. And then the outer planets are like Vashti. People aren't doing that well. The Federation had abandoned Romulus, so now half of them are living on a Borg cube, half of them are struggling on this planet, or they're on several other planets, and things are not going well. That feels like an outer planet to me. But when we got to Vashti, we are introduced to the Qowat Malat, the Romulan warrior nuns. Now, free blades, protecting travelers, the Qowat Malat. I want to know so much more about the warrior nuns. I just think they are the coolest thing on the planet. But how interesting is that? And then Elnor, I mean, honestly, he's not a Qowat Malat because he's male, but he was trained by them. And honestly, he's an elf. I mean, really. But I found all that really fascinating. And there was a couple of things said when he was on Vashti. One, Picard said, I have allowed the perfect to be the enemy of the good. And that was I believe that was in response to her saying, to the Qowat Malat saying, because you could not save everyone, you saved no one. And Picard responded, I have allowed the perfect to be the enemy of the good. And I took that to mean that the Federation and Picard, but the Federation allowed an enemy that could have become an ally in the Romulans to instead stay an enemy. Because by abandoning the Romulans, they may not be powerful now, but at one point in the future, they will be a problem because they are full of anger and feel resentment and need to rebuild their own empire and blame the Federation for it. So they are a worse enemy than they were before. So I have allowed the perfect to be the enemy of the good. Absolutely. The Soshi we get back to the cube and you have Soshi. Now, Ramda, who is the Joseph Campbell of the Romulan world, basically called her the Destroyer, or Seb Chedeb, or Seb Cheneb, depending on what's the correct pronunciation. Really sounds like something out of Dune, doesn't it? You know, the Kizrak, Haderach, and the Bene Gesserit. Well, Seb Chedeb. But she was saying when Soshi's face was superimposed onto Ramda, and vice versa, you had Ramda saying, when we answer the call of the destroyer, that is the day of annihilation. So they are hammering home that Soshi is the destroyer. The other point they're making is by So she's saying that she felt that Ramda, she was really seen by Ramda, even though Ramda didn't like what she saw. If you are really seen, or if you feel really seen, then you somewhere deep inside you know what this person is saying is truth. There is some truth there. And, Day of Annihilation could be Romulans reuniting with the Vulcans. Who knows what annihilation actually means? But what it does mean that they really want us to believe that Sochi is the destroyer, because they really are hammering that home. I really like where the show is going. They're building a whole new universe for us. And this is the planets that aren't exactly, these are almost like the affiliated planets, or the planets that are waiting to be part of the Federation. They're not exactly, they're not exactly together. So it'll be really interesting to see where this goes. And at the end, 7 of 9. I mean, 7 of 9. 7 of 9! Yes!
That's how she ended it.
I agree about your end statement. I was also very excited.
Yes. Well, before we really get started with this, I have to say thank you so much for your voicemail. As usual, great to hear from you, and great insights, actually.
Yeah.
I was taking notes while listening. So,
He didn't mean actually, because obviously you have great insights. He just meant we're glad that you have great insights and that you shared them with us.
what did I say?
You said great insights, actually, as though that's a surprise.
Oh, no, that's not how I meant it. So thank you for calling me on that. No, I meant that your insights were so good that I was taking notes while I was listening to them, because I think I listened to the first 30 seconds before we played this, but I didn't get to listen to the whole thing. It was just like a test to make sure the levels were okay. Okay, so I said I wrote notes. Well, here are the notes. Yes, on world building, and I think that's part of the reason why I gave it an 8 and it didn't sink lower, because there were obviously some things I didn't like about this episode, but the world building was definitely one of the things that I enjoyed. And I agree on the Firefly reference. I mean,
Me too.
I don't know Firefly all that well. I've only seen a few episodes of it. I've never watched the show all the way through.
Shocking.
It's been on my list from Netflix for as long as time has existed. No, like
You should remedy that, and you should also watch
Yeah.
Farscape.
yeah, I've seen more of Farscape than I have Firefly, but
Well, there were more episodes of Farscape than there were Firefly, so that's still no excuse.
the percentage of episodes to not watched episodes is probably pretty similar between them. But yeah. Anyway, I loved the line that this was a highlight, I think, of the writing. I love the perfect the line of "I let the perfect be the enemy of the good" was brilliant, and I think that's exactly what Picard did. But you took this as Picard and the Federation, but I took this as Picard specifically. I had to throw shade on Picard here because, like I said earlier, he should have joined the Federation Red Cross.
Yeah.
He should have done something outside of Starfleet to continue the effort.
Right.
Tucking tail and just going home. To me, it's not the Picard that we know, and it's not the Picard that we love, and this is where there's a disconnect for me.
Yeah. I agree with that statement. Also, I liked the because when Zani called them on it, she basically said, because you couldn't save everyone, you saved no one.
Yeah.
That seems like pretty much what he did, which I find surprising. Again, I go back to the whole, why do Laris and Chabon think he's the bee's knees then?
There's a line, I don't remember what episode this is in, but there's like, I think it was actually in TOS. Now I think about it, there was that one thing that Kirk said, I think, is that like a whole revolution was based upon this one author saying, "Let me help." And to me, how the Federation reacted, how Picard reacted in the end, doesn't follow that. So, and I'm very perplexed by his actions. It doesn't make sense to me. And we're kind of beating a dead horse at this point. Yep. Seb Cheneb, I believe is how you say it. Seb Cheneb. When we answer the call of the destroyer, that will be the end. And I'm wondering if this could just be the end of the Romulan civilization. Maybe they finally join the Federation and become like full-on Federation members. And as a result,
I like her idea of reunification with Vulcan. I
do too. Yeah. So calling the destroyer, it's more like the instrument of change, in that case, and not like a bad thing. So a lot of times destruction isn't a complete destruction of things. It's not an annihilation. It is just a change.
Right. I think people assume destruction is always bad, but it's not necessarily, because it could be, change does mean the destruction of one thing and the beginning of something else.
Yes.
So.
Yep. And the other thing is about really, she says something about really, I felt really seen, and how that could be interpreted. I don't really know.
I don't know either, but I do like your thoughts about that.
Yeah.
Cyberbam.
Yeah, I do too. All right. We've got a short one from a a new listener to our podcast.
Yay.
Edwin. From Arizona. So let's listen to that.
Yeah, hi, this is Edwin from Arizona, and I'm just a new listener. Found out about your podcast like a week ago, and I did have a question pertaining Picard episode 4, more like, pretty much Picard itself, the season. So far, I've enjoyed it, but I did have one gripe. Every episode has been so short and kind of ended abruptly. And I know in The Mandalorian, when I watched that, there were shorter shows, but it just seemed like each episode flow a lot better. But I'm hoping Picard, once the whole season is over and we can watch the whole thing and binge it, I think it could be like really good, because I really like everything of the episode. It just seemed really kind of disoriented, I guess, or just not cut right. But I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but I'm hoping, and I think I'll probably enjoy it a lot better when I watch the whole season. But that was just my question, and I hope to hear from you back. All right, bye.
Well, thank you so much, Edwin, for your voicemail. And I've got some thoughts on this. And I'll say that, yes, I agree that the episodes are too short. We've kind of said that. Actually, Ruthie has been more of a champion of this, strangely enough, than I have, because I've been one to bitch about this on multiple seasons of Discovery and the short treks. So I think that these episodes could have been longer, and we mentioned examples in this episode, and I think the first one was 46 minutes, the second one was 44, the third one was 43, and this one was also 44. And
that's not including all the recap, the titles, and the end credits.
Exactly.
I feel like they should use their powers for good and not evil. In other words, make the shows longer and stop cursing.
All right.
Like, you have this power. They're saying, we're not bound by FCC regulations, so we're going to swear. Well, how about you're not bound by time slots because it's a completely streaming situation, and so you make the episodes longer. How about that, Michael Chabon?
I wonder if at this point it makes me think, because, in Canada, the episodes are, and we'll see how this goes, but in Canada, the episodes are shown on a cable channel. Well, okay. So the next thing I'm wondering is, they had the first season of The Good Fight on CBS. They replayed it over the summer, and I'm wondering if they decided from the beginning, we got to have Picard on CBS, a couple seasons from now.
The Good Fight was strictly a CBS All Access show.
It is, but they aired the first season of it like kind of reruns this past summer, and apparently it
They aired
didn't
it
do so well.
where? What are you talking about?
It was aired on CBS in the summer of 2019.
Oh.
And apparently it didn't do that well, so they weren't going to air it again. So they weren't going to air season 2 this season or something. So, but I wonder if maybe they decided to do that with Picard and maybe like next year or something like that, air the episodes. I don't know.
I was going to say that should still have no bearing on how long they make the episodes, because they've already gotten their money for the streaming, so they can make it longer and just have less commercials.
I just think that we have 6 more episodes. We'll see. But if by the end of this, we see all of the episodes like within a couple of minutes of 44 minutes, then I'm going to wave my finger at CBS and say, why did you do this? Like, especially with Discovery in season 2, they made a lot of the episodes longer. There were a couple of them that were over an hour. And I think that this series deserves that as well. In fact, I think it deserves it more so. And as far as the season playing better with binging, I think it will. I have done this with the first 3 episodes. I watched them back to back to back earlier this week, and I would agree with that. It did flow better, and I would think that as we keep going, it will flow better, and I'll do that as I have time. So
yeah, but unless you're going to release it all at once, you shouldn't count on it being better from binging.
And the funny thing is, CBS All Access does release some of their series all at once. Like, for example, the one that they keep pushing on us now, Interrogation, that one, they released all of the episodes at once. So
I was going to say, are you talking about Tell Me a Story, the one that they keep trying to get me to watch, that I refuse to watch now because they keep trying to get me to watch it?
No.
Oh, okay.
But I would agree about the keep getting to watch. But yeah, it was on this new one that they keep pushing to me, Interrogation. I checked, and all of the episodes released on the same day. So,
well, again, you can't say, "Oh, this will be better when you binge it," because unless you're going to make us, or I should say, let us binge it from the outset, that's kind of doesn't really work for me.
I think for a buzz kind of thing, I think it is a good decision to release them week to week, because like I think for say The Mandalorian, which is also streaming only, that seemed to really play well for a buzz perspective by it being week to week, and it's still like really high as far as the buzz, so really high as far as the buzz. No pun intended there.
But I'm chopped. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I just really want to say to these people, do better.
Yeah. All right. Well,
it's too late now.
Let's move on.
Because they're all in the can.
Let's move on. Okay. So the next one is from Steve.
Hello, Brian and Ruthie. This is Steve, and this is for Picard Absolute Candor. To expand a little bit on my know about the whole skating scene in the ventilation shaft. I just didn't get it. Last episode, we have Narek, saying that he loves her and making this big deal out of it. And then this almost seemed like a first date kind of thing where they're talking about paradigms, and she's asking him again if he's Tal Shiar. And it was, the whole scene was a little confusing to me. And part of it, I almost thought he was trying to push her to activate. And then at the end, he says no, he didn't want her to activate. So that scene really confused me. Also, I love that Dr. Girardi seems to have kind of the audience perspective on things, like when they talk about the Romulan warrior nuns, she's like, those are a thing. And then when she walks in and she's like, is this a secret meeting? Am I part of the crew now? It was really cool to hear those kind of things. I thought Patrick Stewart was really good in this. I love that we get an insight into his character, an insight into what happened when the nun says, because you couldn't save everyone, you didn't save anyone. And that, I think that helps us understand the position that he's in now and why he's so different from what he was in TNG and the character that he was in TNG. And it explains we got a little bit of an explanation of the Rafi relationship there, because it seems he left the Enterprise to go help with this relief effort, and that's where he met Rafi. And so they only knew each other for a short amount of time during that relief effort, and then he just left and he just ghosted everybody, it seemed, for 14 years. Only kind of criticism I have, I laughed at it, was how come in the cold open Picard is dressed like an 80s Colombian drug lord in that kind of white suit and big white hat, and then when he returns to Vashti, he's dressed like he stepped right out of the Matrix. All right, talk to you later.
Haha, that's funny.
Well, thank you so much, Steve, for your voicemail, and you bring up a couple of good insights here as usual. He really screwed up. He really did something out of character here, in a way. Reminds me of the sort of young Picard in, I think it was Rascals, where we see, he's like, I want to talk to my father. I want to talk now. And that's kind of like that Picard. He's like, I'm going home. I'm not playing this anymore. I'm going home and I don't want to deal with the Romulans. Heck with it. I'm going to grow grapes.
Yeah, but that was acting, right?
It was bad acting on my part.
Okay, agreed. But I'm saying the child was acting like the child actor portraying adult Picard in a child's body was acting like a child.
Yes. And I'm saying that Picard acted like a child by taking his toys home. So anyway, I'm hoping that we're going to see something that we see in the Star Trek Picard comic book, which flushed out a little bit of the relationship between Rafi and Picard, or should I say JL? I know a lot of people don't like that, and I know you're one of them. But if I can give out a little countdown spoiler, he joins when he becomes Admiral and takes on this relief effort, this relocation effort.
Was he not an Admiral before then?
It suggests, it doesn't say specifically when, but he gets the assignment to manage this relocation effort. So maybe he was Admiral before that. I don't know. But anyway, he left the Enterprise to join with the USS Verity. And Rafi was his first officer for 4 years. That was fairly established. So he ghosted for 14 years. And the ghosting comment, I have some regrets personally on that. There's some family members that I haven't kept in contact with since I moved away from Canada, and I have some regrets on that. So I kind of, in that way, feel kind of some relation to or understanding of what Picard did and how he might feel some regrets there. But in some ways, it feels like as he's learning this stuff, it's almost like he's coming to it new, like not realizing that these people would have these feelings about him for just abandoning him. Like, wouldn't you have that before it being pointed out here? I don't know. I really like the comment about him looking like an 80s drug lord.
I know, that was funny.
Yeah. So, and I don't know if you've seen the sneak peek into next week that aired at the beginning, but yeah, this is just the start of some interesting fashion that we're going to see. So
yeah,
that looks pretty funny, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, and last we have our 5th voicemail of the episode. So we got a lot this week.
Audio!
Yes, we get one from our good friend Fred from the Netherlands.
Hello, Brian and Ruthie, and all listeners to Talk Through Media. This is Fred from the Netherlands with some feedback for Star Trek Picard Season 1 Episode 4. Okay, let's first get the elephant out of the room. Again, in this episode, I thought that Sir Patrick's acting was not 100% in some scenes. And I will stop nagging about this for the rest of this series. So, Brian, don't worry. This will be the very last time, I promise you. Even if I think it, I won't say it. And as you know, I'm not alone in this because Brian from Hawaii thinks the same. I think it is fantastic to have Patrick Stewart in this role again on screen. And also how this role is portrayed. But I disagree with you, Brian, on what you said last podcast, that it could be his aromatic syndrome or that it could be his crew he is missing, so he is not fully in the surrounding he should be. No, it's just not the good acting of this actor, and it is not a kind of role he is playing. Nevertheless, I think he's fantastic, almost 80, doing this. But I still have a little bit that there are people that putting Sir Patrick on a pedestal and just don't want to see it. And that's okay. I'm just an honest European, or as Ruthie would say, harsh guy. And perhaps a little critical. So, as said, final time I talk about this. And to be completely candor, there are also scenes with Sir Patrick that are superb. And I mentioned some in my guesses. And that is exactly where also Brian hoped for. Because it was a little sad to see that he couldn't do his job perfectly as he did previously. And you thought, okay, this old guy is not having his actor touch anymore. But if you see the superb scenes, you realize he still does have it. And I have to say, I saw that especially the opening scenes or the scenes in the beginning have this problem. I don't know if when they are filming that they are filming in the right order, probably not. But when he gets on in the episode, then it gets less and less. But sometimes there is a scene just in between where it pops up again, like for instance the interview in episode 1. I have one question, one thing I didn't understand. Why Soji suddenly at this silly teenage sliding game was kissing Narek and then suddenly she switched to I don't believe you, I don't like you, what game are you playing? How that moment arose, where it came from. Or did she just realize, again, you're playing a game with me? Some doubt she had before when they were sitting in the bar anyhow. Okay, I have no further comments because I put everything in my yeses, nos, and not good enoughs. Greets, all the best, Fred from the Netherlands.
Thank you so much, Fred, for your voicemail. As usual, you bring good insights, as always, to us. And thank you, of course, for all your visuals. And if you don't come to our podcast blog post, I do highly recommend them and the many screenshots that we highlight that we get from Fred. So anyway, a lot of what I wrote down for notes was just summary of things that we already talked about, but you did convince me, at least with the one example of the not so great acting, but I still think that it's a writing / producing / directing choice and not so much and maybe even an editing choice, but not as much on Patrick Stewart himself. But I don't know, the fact that he's so out of touch, this out of touch Picard seems so out of character to me. Whereas I was thinking that maybe it was the aromatic syndrome, and maybe it is that's causing this behavior change. It just seems so out of character, and it's kind of off-putting. So,
yeah, I have to say about that in regard to the acting. If you see that he's still capable of acting well, then I feel like maybe you can recognize that it's not an acting issue, but as Brian said, a directing or writing choice. Because surely the people making the show are not so starstruck as to think that everything he does is gold and not ask for the best. So I don't know.
Yeah.
If they thought that it wasn't good and that he wasn't giving his best, then surely they would ask for another shot. Whereas if they're not doing that, I have to assume that they think that what they're getting is what they want, which is this choice that they're making as far as directing and writing.
Yeah, and I tend to think that we're going to see that. I'm hopeful that by the end, we're going to see the Picard that we know and love. And
he will emerge from his cocoon.
This is kind of a, how Picard got his groove back season. Anyway, harsh guy, thanks, nitpicking Fred. I had a lot of trouble saying that for some reason.
Yeah.
But
it's a tongue twister.
Yes. But anyway, we're just kidding, of course. But anyway, thank you so much. And now we've got our written feedback. I'll start it off with James, the Augmented Sailor. He says, I'm wondering, where does Seven come in here? Was she following them? It was just a really contrived way to introduce her. When I saw her credited this episode, I actually thought she might show up on the artifact when Narek was showing Soji the Borg ritual. I thought this would have made a bit more sense. I did like that the Romulan sect was almost polar opposite to the Vulcan logic. With its introduction last episode, and now hearing it discussed yet again without explanation is a bit annoying. I don't mind a slow reveal with it, but it gives us something more than just calling her the Destroyer. Hopefully, we'll learn more next week. By the way, did anyone notice if you swap the R and the N in Elnor, you'll get Elron, like in L. Ron Hubbard?
I already did that.
Are there Scientologists in the writer's room? Anyway, can't wait to hear your thoughts, BM and RR.
That's funny. Yeah, I did that Elrond thing already. That was funny. Completely by accident, because I was thinking Elrond, but it's Elnor anyhow. All right. Claire from Facebook says, inventing a convent of Romulan warrior nuns didn't seem very believable, and their rivalry with the Tal Shiar goes entirely unexplained. The story arc is a fundamental shift for Star Trek, unraveling a mystery in pursuit of the big reveal rather than episodic sci-fi, and I hope it works.
Well, Claire, I got the vibe from what you said here. You said that the story arc is a fundamental shift for Star Trek rather than episodic sci-fi. Well, I have to say that I disagree, and this sounds to me like you haven't watched Discovery at all, because that's definitely this serialized type of storytelling is very prominent in Discovery, but it's also, even back then, wasn't. We saw this in Enterprise. There was some serialized seasons of Enterprise, and especially with the story arc in Deep Space Nine in latter seasons was definitely serialized as well. So
yeah, but it is a fundamental shift from Star Trek The Next Generation. I get what she's saying, but
okay.
It is not new with Picard, though, is what we're trying to say, especially with Discovery.
Right.
So yeah, there were through storylines in previous Star Trek series, but I think you're right on the whole. It's episodic, not serial, I guess. Whatever the opposite of episodic is. So I think it's good. I think it's working. You should definitely check out Discovery.
Yeah.
So both Claire and James found this one episode to be the weakest thus far. They still enjoyed it, but James mentions that it seemed much more like a side quest instead of furthering the plot.
And I would also agree that this is the weakest episode thus far by quite a bit. And yet it was still enjoyable. So I agree with both points. Brian from Hawaii had some points that didn't quite fit into the yeses, nos, or not good enough. He says, after a pretty disappointing episode and some cringe-worthy acting by Stewart during the first 3 episodes, this latest installment of Picard made a course correction for the better. The story finally picks up the pace as Picard goes on an away mission and gets more of his mojo back. With 7 of 9 now at his side, they can tackle anything, engage. Well, anyway, it's kind of funny. You're thinking that things are better, and I'm saying things are worse. So we haven't exactly been in agreement this season, Brian, from Hawaii.
Yeah, I think I can see what you're saying about Patrick Stewart's acting being better, but only because I feel like Picard is acting a little bit more like Picard in this episode, at least on the ship. He's acting more like the captain, I guess, is what I mean to say. Like, with his whole trying to direct the action on the ship. Rafi, open a channel. And then he looks at Rios and is like, I mean, you know, if you say it's okay. He's much more decisive, I guess, now than maybe he has been.
Yeah.
I think that really serves to show that he feels more comfortable out in space than he does at the chateau.
I think that's a good point to say. And I would also say that with his admission of guilt, I think that was much more Picard.
Mea culpa.
Like him realizing the error of his ways, I think is in character with Picard. Him being clueless as to the things that he did is not in character. So I like that he's finally starting to become a little more aware, you know. All right. I had to give this next one because I thought it was great. Daniel from the UK says, a suggestion for season 2 opening credits by Dr. Agnes Girardi. Vast quantities of stuff. These are the voyages of the former Admiral Picard, the potentially annoying consequences of absolute candor. However, the preferable alternative to the existential pain of the consciousness of death, to go ahead with sheer hubris and atone for what you have done before.
Oh, that's good. That's good, Daniel.
Yeah, I like that. Cool. Yes. Good thought. Really good thought.
Yep.
Yes. Vast quantities of stuff.
Vast quantities of stuff.
I will go to the store later and buy vast quantities of stuff. Mm-hmm. No, I won't, because I didn't get paid yet.
Vast quantities of money.
Yes.
I understand. I also need vast quantities of money before I can buy vast quantities of stuff.
Yes, because we do not have a post-scarcity economy.
That's right.
Yes. Bring on the replicators.
Mm-hmm. That would be awesome.
Even if the only thing the replicator could do would be to make money.
Yeah.
That would still work. Because with the money, I could buy stuff. Of course, that would be a counterfeiting machine.
I was going to say, I don't think that quite works that way. Because
it could
when
make
you
gold, if
okay,
it could replicate
that's better.
gold or platinum or gold pressed platinum.
All you do when you make more paper is deflate the value of that paper. Anyway. All right. That was awesome, Daniel. And we both want replicators. Okay. LT from NC says, the only general comment was this. We all commented about the way they did the costuming for civilian clothes in TNG. And I do appreciate the way they've done it for the new series. But seeing Picard wearing his Jurassic Park safari suit was worth just a little grin. And that he had his comm badge on. I know you got a lot of comments to get through, and I'm excited to hear the podcast as usual. Well, thank you, LT.
Yep. Donna from Florida says, love the artwork, especially like the background of space when Dr. Girardi and Rios were talking on the bridge. She kind of rambles a little. I guess that's her charm. Was the interior of the ship moving back and forth? I didn't notice that.
I didn't either.
Also, in the hollow replica of the chateau, shouldn't the famous pick be over the fireplace? Oh yeah, Narek and Narissa, a little too close for comfort? Are they twins too? Shades of Game of Thrones. I think he has fallen for Soji. I think he will protect her, but ultimately will have to break her heart when he has to tell her the truth. Finally, I love the introduction of Elnor and Seven. All the pieces are coming together, and there's a heart in there. So
Heart emoji. Also, it's Narek, not Narek.
is it Narek?
Every time she says it, she says Narek.
Okay. I'll have to pay closer attention to that. I did not pick that up. And I have to think that her name isn't actually Narissa. I can't think of, although I guess that would fit, right? Narek and Narissa. I guess that would work.
Maybe, but if she has another name, we don't know it.
Narissa, though, definitely does not feel like a Romulan name. So even though it is close to Nick. Anyway, I didn't notice about the picture over the fireplace. I'll have to take another look at that.
I didn't see that it was there, so I'm assuming it wasn't there.
I wonder why it's not there.
Yeah. Because it's a gaffe.
Or he didn't want it for some reason.
But the scan was provided by Chabon, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
So, all right. Nick from Arizona says, visual question. How would you describe the characters' expressions when Jurati and Rios are talking together? Or Soji and Narek? P.S. Let's do that first.
Okay.
I think that Dr. Jurati is open and has an honest expression. I don't know how to explain that other than saying she sort of looks open and honest. I think Rios is annoyed.
Yes.
Because he wants to read and she wants to distract him and chit chat because she is bored.
But at the same time, he seems to see, he kind of has a little twinkle in his eye a little bit. So he's initially annoyed, but seems to kind of enjoy the company. Like, I take it that Rios is not used to having people around.
Right.
He's not used to having people talk to him. So
right.
To him, yeah. And of course, like the only ones that talk to him are him.
Right. In different voices.
Yes.
I think he's sort of a loner, but not necessarily a loner by choice, maybe a loner by default.
Right.
And so I think it's kind of takes maybe a little bit of getting used to having other people around to interact with. And I think that Agnes Jurati is kind of just maybe being that annoying little sister, sort of.
Well, anyway, I very much like their response together. And I could kind of see maybe some spark of a ship going on between those two. I think it's early on, but
I don't know about that.
Yeah. I mean, he's got this kind of rogue character, and she's kind of a nerd. So
yeah, he's a scallywag. She's a girl who's never been kissed, so to speak.
I know some have speculated that she is a synth herself, which
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I mean, that's like in Westworld when everybody's a host. Not everybody is a host. Just like not everybody is a synth.
Right.
All right. So I hope that was good, Nick. I hope that was what you were looking for.
And as far as Soji and Narek.
Oh, yeah. Forgot about them.
Sorry, Narek, after I've been corrected. I don't know. To me, they're like, I like the performance of Issa Briones. She seems to be believable. And to an extent, I think Harry Treadaway is believable. But there's also a very creepy vibe I get between those two. Like, he's kind of like dating someone that's 3 years old.
Like he's creeping on her?
Yeah, that's my take on it. But I have seen a lot of people, and I think this was suggested earlier, that maybe he's going to fall for her. And yeah, Donna mentioned that earlier. I don't know if that's going to be the case. It may be the case, like he could end up turning against Narissa, but I could also see him not turning against Marissa and him turning into the arch villain. But I don't know. I could see him getting turned to her, but I'm not at that point because that risky business seed, as I think LT said, that did not work for me at all. I just like, what?
Me neither.
What? taking your shoes off, sliding. What? I just didn't buy that at all. And then kind of like, it was almost like they were skating on the Borg cube, ice dancing. I just didn't buy it. The whole thing. I just didn't buy it. And then them kissing, and like, what were those beams that were going across? Wouldn't they like eliminate them? Weren't they like kissing at next to certain death? I don't know, but maybe not.
I don't know. All right. So, P.S. Nick says, how much money do you think we could raise for a Sylvia Tilly or Agnes Girardi Science Officer's Log podcast limited series? I think 7 entries each would be a powerful magical number.
Now, are you asking for this for us to do a podcast limited series on them, or for CBS to release a podcast with these characters? I'm thinking it's the latter, but I don't know. I'm almost positive it's the latter, but...
All right, he says, androids are kind of like Horcruxes. That's kind of true. And then we have a PPS. Disco is 1,000 years in the future. Girardi said we could have biological synthetics in 1,000 years. What are the chances that some trace from the future, like the Voyager's Doctor's mobile emitter or a map, is somehow mixed up with these ancient legends? I don't know.
I had to look it up. A Horcrux is an object in which a dark wizard or witch has hidden a fragment of his or her soul for the purpose of attaining immortality. Horcruxes can only be created after committing murder, the supreme act of evil. Oh, I see why I don't know this. This is a Harry Potter thing.
He's explaining this for everyone who has not ever seen any Harry Potter or read any Harry Potter.
I have seen Harry Potter, but it has been a long time. So
that's no excuse. If you've seen Harry Potter, you should know.
It's been the last Harry Potter I've seen was the second movie, and I haven't seen any since. So
well, there was no Horcrux, I think, in the second one, so that doesn't count.
Now you know why I know nothing about it, because I've only seen the first two movies.
Why is he explaining this?
Well, I didn't understand the reference. Sorry.
That's funny. No, it's okay. I assumed.
To defend myself, the main reason why I haven't continued with it is my wife is vehemently against Harry Potter.
Why?
Who can answer such things? She just thinks it's stupid. So
okay, well, you should watch it anyway. It's not stupid. It's good.
I'll think about that. So
anyway, I don't know if any of that future tech is somehow mixed up with the ancient legends. That would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
After all, time is wibbly wobbly.
Yes. That is something that Ruthie mentioned quite a bit in the last season of Discovery. All right. So we got some late feedback that came in while we were recording that we have added, and that's from Andrew. And it turns out that Andrew's not just from Canada, but he's from Edmonton.
Ah, awesome.
So now we know. All right.
All right, Andrew, you lucked out.
Yes, because we happen to record this on Saturday morning instead of Friday night. So we can conclude it here. He says, my rating is 7 out of 10, one impossible thing at a time. That's a good one, actually. I'm surprised that didn't get mentioned until now.
Yep, that's good.
Yes!
Romulan warrior nuns, enough said. Great to see 7 of 9 back. I think we are supposed to believe that she is one of the Fenric Rangers that was mentioned earlier. Great Picard line, I may never pass this way again.
Ah, that Fenric Rangers thing, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and in fact, in some of the press interviews and clips that I've seen on CBS All Access and on YouTube, presented by CBS All Access, Jerry Ryan has mentioned, in fact, that she is one of the Fenric Rangers. So,
well, there you go.
Yeah, not to spoil things, but it's out there already.
So then that's why she was hanging around.
But I also love the line, and Fred and Brian from Hawaii, you guys should also give him credit for the I may never pass this way again. Because to me, that signified to me that Picard knows that he could die soon. And that if he doesn't go there, he may never get a chance to go and right a wrong. Because I think eventually, like, that's the funny thing is, Picard here, in some ways, he's going back there, I think, to right the wrong. But at the same time, he's approaching things with a very, I'm only doing this for me kind of thing. That very selfish reason for going to see Elnor again. But at the same time, though, he wants to see him. But, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think they were right to call him out that, well, why do you want to see me again? Kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the Australian Romulan things aside, I think that his portrayal was actually really good. He hasn't done very much, actually. He's a fairly new actor, but I thought his performance so far was pretty good.
No!
His nose, he says, I'm really getting bored with the Soji/Borg/brother/sister subplot. It never feels like we are going anywhere. Just that we are spinning our tires.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Not good enough, damn it! Not good enough!
Not good enough, he says. We have Romulan assassin squads operating in secret on Earth. We have banned synths living among us, unaware of who and what they are, for a short 10-episode series. We are taking far too long to get to the main storyline. I thought we were fighting the Zhat Vash, not the Tal Shiar. Yeah, I think that this is muddied a little bit. I think that they need to do a better job of kind of explaining that. And I think what they're saying is they're saying the Tal Shiar to the uneducated kind of thing. They don't want to say, well, it's the Zhat Vash, because just implicating them could bring presence there that other people don't know. So,
like, saying their name aloud makes them appear.
Yes, exactly.
That's another Harry Potter reference.
There you go.
Yeah, I think maybe it's for the uninitiated.
Yeah.
Not the uneducated.
He says, I really wish they would give us some semblance of time passing in the series. Some things feel very sped up, Soji and Narek, and some things very slow. Yeah, I would have liked to have known how long they were traveling in the ship, because it seems like they've been going at least a couple of days based on Dr. Girardi's discussion with Rios.
Yeah, I mean, clearly long enough for her to get bored, because that's what she is. She's bored.
Yeah.
She's like, oh my gosh, there's nothing to do, nothing to look at. I've already read everything I brought. I am bored. Entertain me.
Yeah.
And I don't know that she's necessarily a person that would get bored easily. I don't know if she is like an ADD type or something that would just, I don't know. But, it kind of could be that. But I feel like probably not, because she is, after all, one of the directors of an institute of technology, more or less. I mean, I don't know what else you would call whatever you call that thing. What's that place called where she worked?
Daystrom Institute?
Yeah, so it is an institute. The Daystrom Institute. So she's, a director there. So I feel like she's not necessarily someone who gets bored easily. So it's probably been a long time in space, is what I'm trying to get at.
I have one question I hope you can answer. Does the Federation know about the Borg Reclamation Project? Is this in secret, or is it very public? I would expect a whole lot more Federation scientists on board if that was the case. I would say the answer to that is yes, based on the Trill being there.
Yeah,
And
I think that just because we haven't seen them outright doesn't mean they're not there.
right. So I would say the answer to that is yes. We did see some Andorians as well walking around.
Yeah.
So among others, the Trill and the Andorians being two that I can think of. All right, so that's it for our feedback. Another long episode, it seems. Are there any other notes that you want to bring up?
I mean, this isn't really any kind of a big thing or anything, but I was wondering, did anyone else really think that Elnor was talking to Picard when he said, choose to live? Because it kind of seemed like Picard thought he was talking to him.
Okay.
That's about it. Oh, and I also wrote he's seriously asking for it by tearing down the Romulan only sign.
Oh,
Oh,
definitely.
and what's with the Beta Quadrant?
Oh, well, yes. I got into a discussion with Larry Nemechek about that. In Deep Space Nine, they kept on pushing Alpha Quadrant, Alpha Quadrant, Alpha Quadrant all the time. But when you look at the ways that the actual stellar map is designed, the Federation is in both Alpha and Beta Quadrant, and the Klingons and Romulans are actually in Beta Quadrant. So
Okay.
that was the argument that I heard pushed was that the entrance to the wormhole was in Alpha Quadrant because Bajor and the Cardassians are definitely Alpha Quadrant if you look at the maps. And I can take a picture of a map that I have and send it to you, Ruthie, from Larry Nemechek's Stellar Cartography book.
That's okay. I just wanted someone to say something to me about it, and you did. Thanks.
Okay. I took note of the Wallenberg class transport that the senator mentioned. Apparently, this was a name probably for Raoul Wallenberg, who was a Swedish diplomat credited for saving tens of thousands of Jewish people in Nazi-occupied Hungary during the Second World War. So that makes sense. And I think Nightingale would be named for Florence Nightingale, I imagine.
I think that's pretty clear.
Yeah. Yeah. The 19th century woman who is commonly credited as being the founder of modern nursing. So, yeah. And
She saved a lot of people.
Narissa has that thing in her ear too, I noticed.
So it's a communication thing.
Yes, a Bluetooth headset.
I wonder, it's not, it's got to be something not Bluetooth.
Well,
There's
it's
some
green
future
tooth.
Technology.
It's green tooth for
gosh.
Romulans. Anyway,
Mwah.
all right. So we only have a little bit of news, thankfully, because it's been a long episode already. The Ready Room this week had guest Santiago Cabrera, who of course plays Rios, and we kind of mentioned that earlier, but that's where Will Wheaton mentioned Orphan Black. And by the way, I think
that he is terminably cool.
Yes, and I know Fred would recommend this, but Orphan Black is a great show. Was on BBC America.
It's a great show.
I think you can get it on Amazon Prime.
I don't know. I haven't checked.
And we didn't hear from him this week, but I want to highlight the Orphan Black podcast on Solo Talk Media. Mark DeCote, he did a podcast on that. It was great, and I want to give him props for that. So check it out and check out the podcast if you haven't already done so. Michael Chabon, I think you'd mentioned it earlier, but he posted something on his Instagram, which is like just a text video. So it had different text things coming up, answering fans' questions. And he brought up a lot of the things that have come up about like why does O have sunglasses on? Talks about the smoking and the cursing and the vaping, because a lot of people had issues with the vaping too. And
yeah, even though he said it wasn't vaping.
Yeah, he actually described that it was an Orion device. So if you haven't checked that out already, I would recommend you do that. There's a link to it in the Facebook group. And the last thing I had was Kevin Conway has died. He died last week, February 5th. He, you may remember, played the clone of Kahless in the Next Generation's episode, Rightful Heir. He passed away. And I think I said the last thing, but the last thing would be, Ruthie, you mentioned it earlier, is a great video from Ket Wolski where he exposed, and this is really funny, but there was a rumor going on recently.
Well, there were a few. One of them was that CBS was selling the rights to Star Trek.
Yes, that supposedly the rumor was that Seth MacFarlane and NBC approached Viacom CBS about selling off the rights to Star Trek, and they walked out after an hour meeting. And
another one was that what's his face punched TV because of what someone had said about him.
Yes, supposedly Alex Kurtzman punched an 85-inch TV and knocked it out and broke it because he was mad that Doomcock, who is one of the, what they call the fandom menace of Star Trek, that he said bad things about him. And apparently Ketwalski had exposed the fact that these were plants. Essentially what it was is on 4chan, some fake stories were drummed up and Doomcock reported on them as there being rumors.
Yeah.
And
they leaked these fake stories.
Yeah.
And then exposed them.
Yeah, as fake. So
that we could all laugh at the idiots.
Yeah. So in other words, they didn't have any insider source. They just had some goofball spouting off on 4chan. And I thought that was hilarious. That made me laugh hysterically when I saw that video. And I'll thank LT for alerting me to it. It's just so funny. But of course, they're spinning it to say that, well, that doesn't mean that these things aren't true, or that, okay, you got me on this one thing, but that doesn't mean all the other things aren't true. But,
or that so-and-so is just a shill for whatever.
Yeah.
Something. It's dumb. They're just being dumb.
Yeah. Basically, they were saying that these were planted by CBS to discredit them. And, it's like, no, you guys are just making stuff up, and
they've been presented with facts and they still can't believe it.
Or simply, they're basically taking unsubstantiated stuff, reporting it as rumor and running it with it, or they're bogus and they try to pass stuff off, like the whole 25% rule. That's not even a thing. That's completely wrong. And if you don't know what that
25%?
is,
okay, go ahead.
Supposedly, what happened is that Discovery had to be 25% different than the rest of Star Trek because it was created under the same law, the same copyright rule or whatever that was created for the J.J. Abrams Star Trek. And that whole 25% thing has been unsubstantiated and is completely bogus. It's been
discredited.
It wasn't true with J.J. Abrams. That was a style choice. And about the only thing that I think can be proven as true is that certain merchandising deals, like Eagle Moss, for example, they make the Star Trek models. I'm pulling this up for Ruthie so that she can see this here. Ship was made by Eagle Moss. I was holding up the USS Discovery. Everyone listening to this besides Ruthie. Anyway, their models for Discovery are released under a new Discovery line. And it seems like that was a licensing, but I don't know if it was really. It just, because they're doing a similar thing with the Star Trek Online. So maybe it's not that different. I don't know. But anyway, there could be some accuracy to that. Things were written under a different merchandising rule. But that's the only one to me that seems to be in any way credible. The rest of what they've said, I think, are just bogus. And a lot of it is just butthurt fans. They just hate what has happened. And they're trying to throw in fear, uncertainty, and doubt and trying to rally fans. And I don't know. It's just not worth talking about anymore. All right, that's it. Ruthie, why don't you tell people how to contact us?
All right. To submit your feedback or connect with us and give us those theories, you can go to talkthroughmedia.com/feedback, where you can submit text or you can upload an audio file. You can also call us at 216-232-6146. You can send us an email, picardcast@talkthroughmedia.com. Or you can post in our designated episode thread in our Facebook group, which is facebook.com/groups/Star Trek TTM podcasts. Or You can tweet us at PicardCast.
And like the Talk Through Media's Facebook page, which is at facebook.com/talkthroughmedia. And that's also a place where you can write us a review. So do that there if you could, because I bring that up because those posts, when we post our new episodes, we will post them there at the Talk Through Media page, then share them onto the Facebook group. But those posts that we post at Talk Through Media page can be shared, whereas the Facebook group is a private group, so those can't be shared. So you can share those and, of course, share and retweet us on Twitter. That will help more people find us. But I want to challenge people this week to write us some Apple Podcast reviews. We've gotten a few of the Picard Cast. It's been a while since we've gotten any on Discovery, and I know many of you are listening to us on the Star Trek Discovery podcast feed. So, like some help with that, we would like to thank one of the reviews that came in for the podcast from Donna from Florida for her 5-star review in the U.S. for the Talk Through Media all-inclusive feed. And she wrote us a wonderful review. And thank you so much for that. I would read it, but we're already long enough. So
Thanks, Donna.
Fox in Socks 1. That was Donna. And we have our Patreon as low as $1 a month. You can have access to whatever episodes that we post on the Patreon. And we will have new episodes coming out soon. Now, Ruthie.
Brian.
Let me ask you, we didn't mention this on the news, but last night you went to see The Shat.
I did.
So we will talk about the first 5 episodes and to talk about Shatner and the Wrath of Khan appearance that Ruthie got to see. We will be recording this call-in show on Saturday, February 22nd, and we'll have more detail on the Patreon page. Anyway, we would like to thank our Patreon supporters, James Robbins, Lawrence Todd, Fred Petrie, Clint McCollum, Kyle McAdams, Kim Vogel, Brian Shiro, Christoph Leck Leitner, Jeff Bayako, and our newest supporter, Lee Rodkey.
Thanks.
And another way you can support us is, if you haven't already done so, sign up for CBS All Access. You can do that and help support us by going to talkthroughmedia.com/CBS. And if you do it that way, we'll get a nice little referral and you can help support us. So if you're listening to us on Star Trek Picard Cast and watch Star Trek Discovery, you should switch over and subscribe to the Star Trek Discovery podcast feed. You will be also getting Picard as well as the Discovery episodes. So just wanted to mention that. You could also get the Talk Through Media all-inclusive feed as well. That would give you that as well as the Walking Dead Talk Through. Our next episode is the strangely titled Stardust City Rag, which is Season 1, Episode 5. We don't know who has written it, but we know who's directed it. It's Jonathan Frakes. We don't have a description, but until next time, I'm Brian.
And I'm Ruthie.
Peace and long life.
Live long and prosper.